Chapter 430. Chief Arnold released his spirit energy and the energy turned into the shape of an incomparably strong bull. The Minotaur's source spirits were made of different bulls and Arnold's source spirit was the Golden Barbarian Bull King. The Golden Barbarian Bull King was a very strong demon beast. This source spirit could not only increase one's strength, defense, and explosiveness, the most important thing was that the Golden Barbarian Bull King was a dual-attributed demon beast. Not only did it have an earth-attributed attack and defense, it also had a rare spiritual energy. In the legends, the Golden Barbarian Bull King used its gaze to kill its prey. This ability was called the Deathly Gaze. Of course, in essence, this was a very strong spiritual attack. Arnold's source spirit was the Golden Barbarian Bull King, so he had the Golden Barbarian Bull King's innate talent. It was a pity that spiritual attacks were useless against undead. This kind of monster could only be completely crushed and destroyed. When Arnold gave the order, several hundred elite Minotaurs released their source spirits at the same time. They were all incomparably strong bulls and their source spirits covered their bodies, making the Minotaurs look like several hundred giant bulls digging the ground. That low roar that shook the forest immediately spread across the entire forest. Several hundred of them wildly charged forward. The earth shook and the forest trembled. The Minotaurs relied on their powerful bodies to charge forward, destroying everything in their path. Whether it was trees or rocks, they were all shattered. They were incredibly fast, and the zombies and corpse eaters in front of them did not have time to react. They could only see hundreds of different colored Minotaurs turn into hundreds of shockwaves as they charged forward, creating large fissures in the forest. Their bones were shattered and their bodies were torn apart. These zombies and ghouls were as weak as paper in front of the Minotaurs. They were sent flying or trampled one by one. The Minotaur's powerful charge was clearly displayed at this moment. Chu Tian was very shocked. These bulls actually have this kind of strength? Although Arnold doesn't have any brains, his battle strength is not bad. Dolores had to admit this point. The Minotaur's charge had caused too much of a commotion, and the undead army's main force quickly focused their attention here. There were at least 20 to 30 necromancers riding on gargoyles and leading dozens of gargoyles to intercept the rampaging Minotaurs. No matter how strong the Minotaurs were, they were still flesh and blood. No matter how strong the body of a necromancer was, it could still turn into a pile of rotten meat in an instant. But just as the necromancer was about to attack with all kinds of necromancy spells, Clark and a few half-elven priests riding hippogriffs soared through the air. The necromancers could only send the Minotaur's attacks at the green religion priests. The power of the gnomes came from the forest god, which was a pure life force. It was the complete opposite of the undead religion. Clark and the others had long since been on guard. They had set up several layers of defense, which just happened to be able to keep a low profile from the necromancer's attack. Half-elf who overestimates herself. Kill them. The half-elf and the necromancer immediately fought in midair. The half-elf's mount, the hippogriffs, was no match for the gargoyles, not to mention the gargoyles had the advantage in numbers. After both sides exchanged a few moves, the gnomes immediately fell into a disadvantage. The necromancer priest's petrifying light hit the hippogriffs of the gnomes and that strong curse power instantly turned living creatures into statues. The gnomes quickly jumped off their mounts and shot a green arrow into the air. The gargoyles flapped their wings and the arrow filled with life force was sent flying. Go die. The gargoyles the necromancer priest was sitting on turned into a purple and black shadow as they charged forward. When they were about to smash the gnome's head to pieces, a crow suddenly came out of nowhere and entered the necromancer priest's chest. The necromancer priest shouted out in fear, "Shaman witchcraft." The sound of flesh being torn apart rang out. Countless crows came out of the necromancer priest's chest and mouth, instantly turning the necromancer into minced meat. So it was the shaman sorcerers riding bats to join the battle. The shaman witchcraft was basically useless against the undead, but for the necromancers controlling the gargoyles, it was a very dangerous power. A necromancer priest angrily roared, "That trash Mars really can't do anything right, he actually has this many traitors under his hands." Luz was riding on the back of a giant witchcraft bat. Without saying a single word, he released a large amount of colorful poisonous insects that were like a rainbow cloud, quickly filling the surroundings. These were the witchcraft techniques of the shaman sorcerers. Although the gargoyles were not afraid, the necromancers were living people and they were clear on the shaman's methods. This kind of ability was hard to defend against, so they did not dare approach. The gnomes used arrows to shoot down the gargoyles one by one. At this time, the battle in the forest had entered an intense stage. It was clear that the undead army had been refined recently. They were locals that lived in this area, and because they were polluted by large amounts of death energy, they became undead. These undead were not much stronger than when they were alive, and they did not have any intelligence. It was impossible for the cultivation techniques and martial skills they had when they were alive to be preserved. With just the normal zombies and ghouls, it was impossible for them to stop the Green City army. But at this time, 5 abominations charged forward. These 5 abominations could not compare to the one that was killed in Green City yesterday. But they were all around the 4th true spirit layer. Now that there were 5 of them, it was a very large scene. The necromancers controlled large amounts of gargoyles, ghouls, and zombies. They were all centered around the 5 abominations, forming 5 groups. This was because the abomination could release a highly toxic death fog. This kind of poisonous fog was very destructive to living creatures, but it didn't harm the undead that were under the cover of the poisonous fog. This made it a lot more difficult to deal with them. Dolores knit her brows. Demonic god followers, it's time for us to make a move. Hundreds of demon god summoners began to use their summoning techniques. Hundreds of spirit beasts appeared in front of them. Although spirit beasts' abilities were greatly weakened in all aspects, as spirit beasts, they were no longer afraid of normal attacks. Thus, they were able to charge to the front without fear of the poison fog of necromancy. There weren't enough summoners. Perhaps they wouldn't be able to stop them for long. When the battle was in full swing, there was another change. There was an explosion coming from the distance and large amounts of dark red clouds that were like a sticky substance poured into the sky. An incomparably large source energy array appeared in the sky. The scale of the source energy array was very large. It almost covered the entire sky. This is bad. The Lich was speeding up, most likely wanting to complete the ceremony ahead of time. This source energy array had not been condensed to its peak, but with its current strength, it was more than enough to destroy Green City. This is bad. There are too many undead in front of us. With the abominations guarding them, our main force can't charge through at all. The dark red clouds spread across the sky like a tide, and a portion of them charged at the forest. Everyone could feel the terrifying energy contained within the dark clouds, but they could only watch it come closer. Hong! A large sound rang out. A bolt of black lightning fell down from the dark clouds. The thunderbolt struck the spiritual beasts, and with a single strike, dozens of spiritual beasts were annihilated. This was just the beginning. More and more black thunderbolts continued to fall, and each of them contained an extremely strong power of death. If they struck a living being, they would instantly turn that living being into an undead spirit. If they struck an undead creature, it would be as if they were injected with stimulants, causing their strength to skyrocket. Dolores's expression became uglier and uglier. This is bad, we'll most likely lose if we keep fighting like this. Chu Tian shook his head and said, it's really useless, let me do it. Fox, let's see you first. The little fox jumped out and turned into a mass of gray mist, appearing several hundred meters in the air. Then it teleported several times and instantly charged into the dark clouds that covered their heads. The little fox's snow-white body could be ignored in front of the giant energy cloud. But with just a gentle breath, it created the effect of all rivers flowing into the sea, causing the incomparably dense energy cloud to change shape. All of it surged towards the little fox's body, and the lightning of death that was gathering in the dark clouds instantly disappeared. Chu Tian used the void escaping to charge through the undead. Large amounts of gargoyles and ghouls surrounded them, but they had no effect on Chu Tian. 18 figures followed behind Chu Tian, and their speed was not any slower than Chu Tian's. The 18 divine blood-eaten corpses were covered in a glow, just like 18 dark golden bronze statues. A palm shot out. The gargoyles were shattered to pieces. The low-level undead were like chickens that couldn't withstand a single blow. Even if they crawled around the divine blood-eaten corpses like ants, as long as the divine blood-eaten corpses released light, it would cover all the undead within several dozen meters. Finally they would be torn to pieces by the vast energy released by the divine blood-eaten corpses. The divine blood-eaten corpses' steps were incomparably steady, not changing at all. They were not affected by these attacks at all. Chu Tian was very satisfied with the power of the divine blood-eaten corpses. This was a pretty good chance to use it. He could test just how strong these fellows were. Chu Tian gave an order to the divine blood-eaten corpses. Leaving 3 divine blood-eaten corpses to guard, the other 15 divine blood-eaten corpses split into 5 groups of 3. Each group had the same goal, the abomination. Chu Tian wanted to control these divine blood-eaten corpses and destroy the abomination surrounded by tens of thousands of undead. This was an almost impossible matter. The abomination was a very powerful undead monster and there were large amounts of ghouls and gargoyles protecting it. How could 3 divine blood-eaten corpses approach it? Chu Tian had a lot of confidence in the divine blood-eaten corpses. A battle puppet refined from the blood of a spiritual god, its strength could not be underestimated. Chapter 431. The little fox's aura swallowing the mountains and rivers stopped the powerful energy cloud from spreading, completely shocking the necromancers. This energy came from the ruins and it was incomparably pure. Unless it was an expert on the level of the Elven King, it was impossible for them to resist it. How did this little life form do this? The energy it had just swallowed was enough to create an undead army. At this time, the divine blood-eaten corpses were running faster and faster and the light they released was becoming brighter. The energy that leaked out of their bodies tightly wrapped around them, turning them into glowing balls. With an unstoppable momentum, they crushed through the undead monsters. That's right. It was a crushing. Even if it was just a little bit. The undead were instantly turned to powder. The divine blood-eaten corpses' charge was 10 times stronger than the Minotaurs. Even if there was an army in front of them, it would be like 10 million ants, they could just step over them. Looking down on everything. Pressing forward. The gargoyles kept sending out curses, hoping to slow it down, but this kind of attack had no effect on the divine blood-eaten corpses. The loathsome evil seemed to have felt a sense of danger and immediately let out a deep roar. It awakened a powerful death energy from within its body. In the end, it quickly surged out of its body in the form of a shockwave. The energy flow that was like a tsunami overflowed in all directions. Everything in the surroundings was quickly petrified and turned into obsidian without any signs of life. It was this move again. The 3 divine blood-eaten corpses were less than 5 meters away from the attack. The energy that was like a ball of light covering the eaten corpses was like a snowball in boiling water, melting at a speed visible to the naked eye. That jet-black energy continued to erode the center of the eaten corpses. The necromancer priest let out a sigh of relief. These fellows were indeed a bit strange, but their strength didn't seem to be as strong as he had imagined. The abomination's high purity and concentration of death energy erupted in a single breath. This kind of high-speed energy flow could directly envelop and seep into the surrounding matter, changing it from the very core, which was why it could erase any existence. The energy on the surface of the divine blood-eaten corpses was not strong enough, so the high-speed energy shot through this energy and landed on their bodies. Without any protection, it was impossible for them to block this kind of attack. They would instantly turn into 3 black obsidian statues. As expected. The moment the divine blood-eaten corpse's protective energy was completely eroded away, the black energy wildly sprayed over its body like paint. The divine blood-eaten corpse was quickly covered in a layer of black from head to toe and it was glossy like obsidian. Was he killed? That was all there was to it. Dolores frowned in confusion. However, just as everyone was shocked and the necromancer was ridiculing him, she discovered that Chu Tian revealed an enigmatic smile. Then, a shocking scene occurred. The three figures that had clearly turned into human-shaped obsidian statues were still moving forward and maintaining their previous speed. They pounced on the abomination from 3 different angles and punched the abomination's body at the same time. People could clearly see the black traces of the divine blood-eaten corpse quickly fading. It wasn't fading, the energy didn't disappear, it was just leaving the body. It went from every corner of the body to the right arm and finally gathered in the fist. It condensed into a small piece that was sent back into the abomination's body. The 3 punches landed on the abomination's body. The energy released from the punches caused the abomination's body to instantly turn into stone, and then it exploded. The abomination was directly knocked to the ground, and a third of its body disappeared. The abomination's power did not harm the divine blood-eaten corpse. This power was absorbed by the divine blood-eaten corpse and used by the divine blood-eaten corpse to send a punch back at the abomination's body. This kind of attack was unheard of. Don't think that the abomination is that easy to defeat. The necromancer priest quickly controlled the abomination. Ignorant people, I'll let you see the true power of the abomination. The abomination was an undead creature, it couldn't even be considered a normal undead creature because the abomination did not have a soul flame. It was just a mixture of flesh and energy, so it did not have any weakness. Even if it was cut into pieces, it would not die. Roar! The loathsome evil let out a deafening roar, and its body continued to tear apart. It quickly opened its countless mouths, and countless long things that looked like blood vessels and tentacles exploded out, like fireworks exploding in all directions. They were faster and sharper than arrows, and they stabbed into the bodies of the ghouls one by one. The ghouls let out painful howls as their originally strong bodies withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Large amounts of flesh and blood were sucked out and they finally turned into a bag of bones that fell to the ground. The abomination instantly recovered a large amount of flesh and energy. The missing parts of its body were replenished, and the red tentacle-like things were still wandering around its body, stabbing into the ghouls' bodies and devouring the surrounding ghouls as if they were hungry and thirsty. In just a few seconds, 100 ghouls had been eaten by the abomination. The abomination seemed to have become taller and more muscular, becoming even more sinister and terrifying. This kind of undead monster was already in existence that couldn't be measured by common sense. It was originally a monster formed from the combination of flesh and energy under the undead church's secret technique. Therefore, as long as the secret technique on its body wasn't broken, it couldn't be truly killed. The abomination was more tenacious than any other undead creature. Hey, how about it? The necromancer priest rode on the back of the gargoyle and looked down on them with a victorious attitude. The abomination is undying and can swallow all flesh and blood. As long as there are materials, it can recover at any time. Even if you have heaven-defying skills, you shouldn't think of defeating the abomination in this kind of environment. This terrifying scene did not make Chu Tian's expression change at all. He just revealed a taunting and disdainful smile and the 3 Yin corpses charged at the abomination again. Seeking death. The abomination's arms split open and a black bone blade appeared. It sent out 2 slashes from the left and right and the blade glow sent the divine blood-eaten corpses flying. The might of these 2 attacks was too strong and the divine blood-eaten corpses did not have any protection at all. They used their flesh to block these attacks and were split in half. The last divine blood-eaten corpse charged at the abomination. The abomination's large belly suddenly split open and it was like an incomparably large mouth. It was filled with rotten flesh and dense rows of teeth, making people's scalps go numb just looking at it. The abomination did not give the divine blood-eaten corpses any chance to escape. The tentacles on its body shot out at the same time and tightly wrapped around the divine blood-eaten corpses. Then it threw them into its large mouth. The large mouth closed. The belly closed. The loathsome evil's fat stomach wriggled as if it was a big mouth chewing on food. The sound of bones and flesh being crushed could be heard. A person was swallowed whole just like that, or rather, stuffed into its stomach. Furthermore, with the loathsome evil's strength, even if a piece of iron was stuffed into its stomach, it would instantly disintegrate into nothingness. The necromancer priest said with a cold smile, "This kind of thing is only fit to be a snack for the abomination." Chu Tian smiled without saying a word. "I'm afraid your teeth aren't good enough. The consequences of eating something bad are very serious." When Chu Tian spoke, the two Yin corpses that had been split in half did not bleed at all. They were like two magnets that were attracted to each other and stood up once again. Their clothes had already been destroyed and they were completely naked. The divine blood Yin corpses had been refined for a long time and their outer appearances had already changed greatly. From head to toe, there were no signs of gender. There was no hair, no pores, and the dark golden skin that seemed to be cast from gold and copper was covered in dense runes. Both of his eyes were open, but there was nothing in his eye sockets, only a scarlet radiance radiating from them. What is this? Everyone was stunned by this undead that didn't seem like an undead, a living being that didn't seem like a living being. Being split in half from head to toe, the giant instantly healed. Could it be that they wouldn't die? At this moment, the loathsome evil's body began to convulse, making a sound similar to boiling water. Its originally huge and malevolent body suddenly became irregular, like a piece of wax that was rapidly melting under high temperature. Pieces of rotten flesh fell off, and the loathsome evil's body swelled up. What is going on? The necromancer priest found that he could no longer control the abomination. The abomination's body seemed to be filled with a kind of energy that was like a terrifying virus that was seeping into every corner of the abomination's body. It made the abomination's body lose control and it began to collapse at an unbelievable speed. Hong! The abomination completely exploded. The energy in its body was released at once, which was equivalent to an explosion. Although it couldn't compare to the explosion in Green City, it was still enough to cover several hundred meters. All the ghouls, gargoyles, and zombies in this area, as well as the necromancers that couldn't escape in time, were all killed. The divine blood Yin corpses walked out from the center of the explosion. Its body was also heavily deformed, but its bones gave off crackling sounds as they quickly returned to their original position, finally returning to normal. The three divine blood Yin corpses were not injured at all. The divine blood Yin corpses dared to swallow them. The divine blood could break all curses and it could also break death energy. Not to mention a trivial abomination, even if the bone dragon swallowed the divine blood Yin corpses, it would still suffer. At this time, there were explosions coming from several directions. Several abominations had already been killed. Chu Tian was very pleased with this result. It really wasn't a waste to pay such a large price. These Yin corpses had almost immortal bodies, at least with the power of the true spirit realm, it would be very hard to kill them. This was the power brought by the divine blood. In the ancient god's memory crystal, these puppets were called divine servants. The divine servants were not gods, but they had a portion of a god's power. Now the 18 divine blood Yin corpses were about to be transformed into divine servants. Although they were not very strong, they had high growth potential. Chapter 432. Under the little fox's wild swallowing, the energy cloud gradually disappeared. The little fox immediately returned after completing its task and the 18 divine servants also returned to its side. The necromancer's face became very ugly. This was truly strange. The undead army created by the undead ruins and the energy released by the undead ruins was enough to crush Green City, but who would have thought that the undead religion would be the one becoming weaker and weaker? What was going on? This was completely out of their expectations. The 5 abominations were directly killed. The energy cloud was disintegrated before it could even be used. Under the wild attacks of the forest army, the undead monsters began to show signs of being pushed back. They didn't hope to destroy the other side, they just hoped to stop them here, giving the Lord Lich enough time to complete the ceremony. Once this heaven-shocking array was activated, Green City would be instantly destroyed and the millions of people would turn into undead. No matter how the other side struggled, it would all be useless. Now the large net covering the sky was becoming larger and larger, gathering more and more energy, but this array was too large. Even if it continued like this, it wouldn't be enough without half a day. What could the undead army use to block it? Just relying on these tens of thousands of ghouls and zombies? We can't waste time here. Chu Tian knew that the Lich was completing the ceremony ahead of time and this place was quite far from the valley, so they didn't have time to waste. He shouted to the others, "We'll charge over and kill that Lich." "All right. Charge over." Although their losses weren't small, everyone became braver as they fought. After all, this concerned the fate of the entire clan, so no one could afford to lose this battle. Chu Tian led the 18 divine servants in the lead. Relying on the void escaping to protect himself, even if he passed through the army, it would be hard for him to receive any damage. The 18 divine servants followed behind him. These puppets had shocking defenses, being immune to curses, death energy, and dark energy attacks, so they were unobstructed. Of course the little fox was the most important. It could swallow the attacks coming from all directions. When large groups of undead monsters surrounded them, the little fox just needed to gently suck them in. Whether it was the gargoyles, ghouls, or other high-level undead, the soul flames of the undead monsters would be sucked out. The little fox's special ability was an instant kill. One person, one fox, and 18 puppets, unscrupulously shuttled through tens of thousands of undead. Wherever they passed, the undead would fall to the ground. So many necromancers had besieged them, but they couldn't do anything to them. Chu Tian's power alone was enough to suppress most of the undead. How could the Green City people not be shocked? How could the Church of the Undead not be shocked? People had no choice but to accept Chu Tian wholeheartedly. If this human didn't interfere, perhaps Green City wouldn't even need to wait for the undead religion to make a move. The shamans would destroy Green City first and the undead religion would be the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. In the end, it would be hard for Green City to have a good ending. In the end, this person ruined the shaman's plan. Now, it brought such a huge blow to the undead church. The undead couldn't hold on any longer. However, at this moment, the scales of victory began to tilt. From the direction of the basin, a large number of densely packed black shadows appeared, impressively tens of thousands of Een souls. Each one had a fierce green face and sharp fangs. They were the most ferocious of the Een souls, being made of strong death energy. They had form but no substance and there were a large number of them. The Een souls let out sharp howls, and their bodies began to turn red. They fell down from the sky like meteors, and the already withered and dead forest immediately exploded into hundreds and thousands of holes. This was an indiscriminate bombardment. Whether it was the undead army or the forest army, they were all in the range of the specter bombs. The specter bombs did not release flames or normal shockwaves, rather it released a strong death energy and spiritual energy. This attack did little damage to the undead army, but it was very harmful to normal beings. This wave of explosions did not end yet. Another large group of gargoyles appeared in the sky. These gargoyles were carrying soldiers covered in black armor and energy. When Chu Tian saw the appearance of these soldiers, his expression slightly changed. Dread Knights? The Lich truly had some skills. He could even create this kind of thing. There weren't many Dread Knights, but there were still several hundred of them. Don't look down on several hundred Dread Knights, their battle strength was very terrifying. If Chu Tian's guesses weren't wrong, these Dread Knights were collected by the Lich from the forest. They were made from the corpses of the old chiefs of the large tribes. Those old chiefs that died of old age or accidents were all very strong. When they were turned into Dread Knights, they could recover most of their strength from when they were alive and they could even keep a part of their cultivation technique from when they were alive. The black heavy armor on the bodies of these high-level undead wasn't real armor, but was condensed from dark energy. The appearance of these undead basically retained the appearance of when they were alive, but their eyes were spewing soul flames, and their whole body was wrapped in a dark undead aura. 400-500 Dread Knights joined the battle. This was a very strong battle strength. Although a single Dread Knight could not compare to an abomination, 4-5 of them together were stronger than an abomination. Now that there were several hundred dread knights joining the battle, this was equivalent to adding in the battle strength of over 100 abominations. This would immediately put a large pressure on Green City. A dread knight raised its large sword to attack at a shocking speed. If he didn't use the Netherworld Flame Sword, Chu Tian could only barely keep up. The large sword was covered in black energy and it could instantly send out over 20 sword glows, all attacking different parts of Chu Tian's body. The Dread Knights were not just fast, their attacks were also very strong. With Chu Tian's void escaping, he could not block them, so he could only retreat. A sword chi swept out and the Dread Knight raised its sword to block the Netherworld sword chi. It only retreated a few steps before stabilizing itself and chasing after Chu Tian like a shadow. The little fox did not give it a chance this time. The soul flame in the Dread Knight's helmet floated a few times before leaking out of the gaps in the armor. Finally it was swallowed by the little fox. Chu Tian heaved a sigh of relief. He wasn't afraid of the Terror Knights, but these guys were too strong. There would be no end to the fight, and Chu Tian didn't have time to waste here. Before the forest army could recover from the bombardment, the Terror Knights had already launched a round of attacks. This time Green City and the forest locals were caught off guard, so they suffered heavy losses. The Necromancer was overjoyed to see this. The Dread Knights were the personal guards that Lord Lich had refined. Lord Lich must have sensed that the situation here was not good, so he sent his personal guards over. With the help of the Dread Knights, the pressure could be slightly alleviated. He couldn't take it anymore. They didn't have enough soldiers. They hadn't even reached the basin. Clark revealed an anxious expression. It would be bad for Green City if they kept fighting like this, but when Clark was filled with anxiety, a sudden situation appeared. Look! A group of magical beasts is coming. In the sky above Green City, there was a large group of demon beasts charging over. There were dragon hawks, twin-legged flying dragons, thunderbirds, and all kinds of demon beasts, reaching 2,000–3,000 of them. Druids. The druids are here. These magic beasts were transformed from druids. The druids directly attacked the undead army. These powerful magic beasts had terrifying destructive power, and under this round of crazy attacks, the undead army that had just turned the situation around instantly fell into a disadvantageous position. The little fox continued to jump through the Dread Knights. In just 5–6 minutes, several dozen Dread Knights had been killed. The druids had always been neutral. At this critical moment, they had helped Green City resolve this crisis. However, Chu Tian was not surprised by this at all. The undead religion was not targeting a single city, they wanted to turn the entire area into an undead land. The druids had lived in Green City for many years, so how could they tolerate this kind of thing happening? This was why they decided to help Green City. Roar! A deep dragon roar came from the sky. A green dragon that was more than 10 meters long swooped down from the sky. Scorching dragon breath sprayed out, turning the ground into a sea of fire wherever it passed. Hundreds of undead monsters were burned to ashes by the terrifying dragon breath. Prophet Yoda. Prophet Yoda had made a move. This was something that had never been seen before. We are here to help Sir City Lord. After the green dragon fiercely cleaned up the undead monsters, it landed beside Chu Tian. It lowered its giant dragon head and a deep voice came from its mouth, "Let me give you a ride." "Ha, ha, ha, then I'll have to trouble you." Chu Tian brought the little fox and the divine servant to stand on the green dragon's back. He forcefully waved his hand, "Green citizens, follow this city lord to kill. Long live the city lord. Long live the city lord." At this moment, the other druids also brought a lot of elites. This group of people shouted as they flew through the vast forest towards the axis of the evil energy at an extremely fast speed. When they looked into the distance, they could vaguely see the basin in front of them. The entire basin was like a giant basin that was filled with dense dark energy and death energy. There was a giant pillar of energy that pierced through the clouds, stirring up the entire sky. It was sending the energy from the ground into the sky and distributing it to the giant array. Chu Tian was puzzled. The energy in these ruins was a bit too strong. What kind of messy things were buried in it? But he didn't have time to think about it at this moment. Destroying this damn place was the most important matter right now. The Druids, Green Religion, Shaman Religion, Arnold, Dolores, and the other forest elites had all been in conflict with each other and had fought many times, but now they were united like never before. They were facing a common enemy, the undead religion. Chapter 433. The Lich floated above the conical-shaped altar. This altar was still continuously sending out energy, which was then distributed to the surrounding towers of undead souls. The towers of undead souls then completed the arrangement of the undead soul formation, allowing the energy to be continuously sent into the sky, converging into one, and finally pouring into the dome, forming an astonishingly powerful formation. The undead army had been completely routed. Chu Tian brought Yoda, Clark, Arnold, Dolores, and the others, as well as thousands of elites. They had already surrounded the altar at this moment. "Stop," Clark said to the Lich floating in the air like a ghost, "You've already lost." "Lost? Now you're talking about winning and losing, and you're being carried away." The Lich looked down at everyone, standing in the air, his cloak fluttering in the wind. A pair of eyes burning with blue flames revealed a cold and silent expression. Even though the Lich didn't have eyes, Chu Tian could feel that the other was looking at him. "I've never seen a human like you before. You flatter me, you flatter me. I've never seen a Lich like you before." Chu Tian grinned, "Even though you've caused a lot of trouble, I can still give you a chance. Stop the ceremony, stop the undead army, surrender to me and I won't destroy you." The Lich didn't have any emotions. Even if Chu Tian pointed at his nose and scolded him, he wouldn't feel any anger, so Chu Tian didn't care about his choice of words at all. "If you perform well, I can make a body for you to reincarnate." "Reincarnate?" The Lich indifferently said, "I'm not interested." If it was a normal Lich, this would be an irresistible temptation. Because after becoming a Lich, one would gradually lose their humanity until they completely lost the feeling of being alive. The Lich would use all kinds of methods to find themselves before they were completely numb. Returning to being a living being was undoubtedly the best choice, but this was something that was almost impossible to do. Turning a living being into an undead was extremely difficult. Transforming a dead spirit into a living being was even more difficult than ascending to heaven. The Lich did not believe in Chu Tian, he did not even believe that anyone in this world could do it. Moreover, as a person who had lived for 2,000 years, his personality had long been completely frozen, there would not be the slightest fluctuation, so he did not care about life or death, he was not afraid of destruction, and he did not yearn for a new life. This was the reason why Chu Tian hated Liches. Everyone thought that becoming a Lich would grant them immortality. In fact, after reaching this state, what difference was there from dying? Eternal life? How could immortality be so easy in this world? What's the point of telling it all this? Clark looked at the increasing energy and became anxious. If the Lich wants to delay the ritual, the consequences will be irreversible. A Lich that had lived for 2,000 years. He was like a living fossil, and anyone who could become a Lich was a knowledgeable person. If he could recruit such a person, it would definitely be of great help to him. It was a pity that with the current situation, there was no time to negotiate. This Lich did not have any emotions in his head, he did not have any desires or fears. He was just like an ice-cold machine, forever carrying out his last thought before his personality disappeared, which was to seek benefits and avoid harm. The Lich did not believe in Chu Tian and was not interested in rebirth. It would be better to turn Green City into an undead land, this would be more beneficial to him. It's been too long since I've fought with anyone. The Lich's voice did not have any fluctuations, now let me see just what kind of strength you have. As the Lich spoke, it slowly raised its two skinny arms. The surrounding towers of undead spirits all emitted power like lighthouses. A pitch-black corrosion quickly spread out, as if it was constantly corroding space, causing the entire world to be plunged into darkness. The earth shook. Skeletons climbed out one by one. The entire valley was filled with skeleton soldiers, and each skeleton looked like they were carved from black jade. There was a strong spirit flame burning in their skulls as they began to move under the Lich's command. There were too many skeletons, and Chu Tian's group was like an island surrounded by a sea of bones. They did not have an advantage in terms of numbers. These skeletons were not simple skeletons. The Lich had used a large amount of death energy to awaken them, so they had a shocking strength for a short period of time. Because there were too many of them, even if they were piled up, they would still die. The little fox revealed a grin. It did not need Chu Tian's orders as it took the initiative to charge out. It passed through the sea of skeletons, and a blue soul flame sea appeared wherever it went. Large amounts of soul flames came out of the skeletons and finally gathered in the little fox's mouth, becoming a delicacy for it to swallow. Chu Tian said with a smile, "If you only have this bit of skill, I advise you to surrender earlier." With this large amount of skeleton soldiers, if they were on the battlefield, they would be invincible. They were not afraid of death and they had decent strength, they were simply natural soldiers. But they just had to meet the undead's nemesis, the little fox. No matter how many there were, it was useless because they couldn't get close at all. Clark loudly ordered, "Destroy everything here." Everyone began to attack in all directions, trying to destroy the towers of the undead. They quickly found a problem. Each tower of the undead was protected by a strong energy, so destroying any one of them was not an easy matter. At this time, the Lich coldly chanted an incantation and the towers of the undead released black lightning, attacking these people with lightning speed. The death energy condensed into lightning that hit living beings, turning them into undead monsters. This kind of attack was even more terrifying than normal energy attacks. The little fox used its 4 limbs to destroy the skeletons. It found a problem: there seemed to be no end to the skeletons. It had just destroyed a group of skeletons, but when it came back, it found that these skeletons had stood up again. Originally, there was too much death energy in the valley, and this energy could continuously summon skeletons, making the little fox too busy to deal with it. Chu Tian slightly narrowed his eyes. The entire valley's energy was in the Lich's hands, so he was an invincible existence. He could control the towers of the undead to attack, and he could summon skeletons endlessly. If they didn't have a way to break this great undead array, everyone would be exhausted to death in the end. The Lich Fiend didn't stop his attacks. He slowly raised his arms, and the dozen or so towers of undead spirits all shot black lightning at the Lich Fiend. Countless lightning bolts gathered in the Lich Fiend's hands, and almost in the blink of an eye, they formed an incomparably huge ball of lightning. His hands gently raised it. The energy ball slowly rose up, and it was still wildly gathering energy from all directions. Its color became brighter and brighter, finally turning into a black as thick as iron. Moreover, it was growing at an incredible speed, and in just a short 10 seconds, it had become as big as a small mountain. Everyone's expression changed. Although they knew that the Lich was not weak, it wasn't to the point of being invincible. At least the druid prophet Yoda had the ability to fight him, but after the Lich borrowed the power of the array, his strength increased by more than 10 times. In this situation, no one was a match for him. Once the energy ball fell, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yoda softly coughed a few times while leaning on his cane. An unexpected power erupted from his body, and he was covered in green light. Now that things had reached this point, he could only take on this move. "Prophet, wait." Chu Tian calmly walked over. "Let me deal with this fellow." "You?" Everyone was stunned. There was no need to doubt Prophet Yoda's strength. If Yoda turned into a dragon, he could even fight a spirit transformation cultivator. Chu Tian was just a trivial earth spirit cultivator and was only in the first true spirit layer. The little fox couldn't deal with this at all, so what could he use to resist this power? Chu Tian did not explain as he jumped up and charged at the towers of the undead like an arrow. He wanted to destroy the towers of the undead and make the energy ball lose balance. That was impossible. These towers of the undead were protected by a powerful energy. It was not something Chu Tian could break with his strength. When everyone thought that Chu Tian's actions were meaningless, Chu Tian's body suddenly released a burst of power. A terrifying source spirit aura soared into the sky, turning Chu Tian's eyes a deathly gray color. The Lich muttered when he saw this, undead energy. Does he have the power of the dead in his body? Chu Tian's body was covered in a layer of gray mist. When the gray mist came out, it was absorbed by the towers of the undead. Chu Tian gave a low roar, break. Several explosions came from the towers of the undead. Large amounts of cracks appeared on the towers of the undead. The cracks kept increasing and spreading faster and faster, finally covering the entire towers of the undead. Finally it exploded with a large sound. Dolores was very shocked. How did he do it? The towers of the undead were built to absorb death energy. Our powerful city lord seems to also have undead energy. Yoda said with a smile that didn't seem like a smile, the towers of the undead will repel any energy that comes near them, but it will not repel death energy. He used the death energy to create an imbalance inside the towers of the undead, achieving his goal of destroying the towers of the undead. That floating in the sky, the almost completely condensed energy ball suddenly began to distort. Then it began to bulge. It was clear that it had lost its balance. Be careful of your defenses. Everyone hurriedly activated their protective essence force, and the energy ball exploded in midair. The explosion didn't emit any light or heat. Instead, a cold current enveloped the entire canyon, and the entire heaven and earth was instantly enveloped in endless darkness. Although it was far away, although the energy ball was not complete, and although they had protective spirit energy, there were still some weak people that were heavily injured. It could be seen how strong this attack was. Suddenly, the endless darkness was swept away by a stream of air and was finally swallowed into the little fox's stomach. Chu Tian looked at the Lich on the altar. What other skills do you have? The Lich did not say anything. He had to admit that this human was hard to deal with. Since it was like this, he could only use his last move. The earth began to tremble. Everyone could clearly feel a strong sense of resentment being released from the depths of the earth. A large amount of gray fog gushed out from the cracked surface of the ground. Shortly after, the ground continued to shatter, as if something was propping it up. First, a pile of incomparably large gray wings stretched out from the ground, followed by an incomparably large body and incomparably large claws. Bone dragon. Chu Tian was shocked. Is there a dragon tomb below us? Chapter 434. Bone dragon, as the name implied. This was an undead formed from the bones of a dragon. The dragon race was a large group. There were high-level dragons like giant dragons and flood dragons as well as low-level dragons like earth dragons and dinosaurs. The bone dragon that appeared in front of Chu Tian, although it was not a peak-level giant dragon, it was still an undead formed from a dragon. Turning a high-level dragon into an undead was not an easy matter. No matter how strong the Lich was, he was still in the heaven spirit realm. Even if he had 100 years, he might not be able to create an undead bone dragon. This bone dragon's corpse had been buried here a long time ago. It had been nurtured in this extreme environment for countless years and each bone was filled with death energy. It was already an excellent undead material and as long as it was awakened with a special method, it would immediately become a terrifying undead monster. After the Lich had awakened the bone dragon, his body, which was floating above the altar, suddenly shot out in a straight line. His body ignited in blue flames in midair, like a burning butterfly. He actually started to burn rapidly and finally landed on the body of the huge bone dragon that was shrouded in gray energy. What is it doing? Sacrifice technique. Chu Tian was a bit surprised at the Lich's actions. The Lich's body is used as a sacrifice to transform the body, pouring all of its soul flame and spirit into the bone dragon's body, merging with the bone dragon and breaking away from the Lich's body. The dragon's skeleton contained an incomparably strong resentment and curse. This was something that any soul would find hard to endure, but the Lich was not affected at all, so he slowly refined the bone dragon's thoughts. In order to make this powerful body his own, he had no choice but to merge with the bone dragon ahead of time. Roar! The bone dragon roared at the sky as if it had been reborn. Its skeleton-like body was filled with blue flames. From its head to its tail, from its body to its wings, its entire body seemed to be wrapped in a layer of gray membrane. Blue-white flames flowed within this membrane. That was the Lich's full power. The bone dragon's eyes released a purple glow. The Lich's soul flame was already sealed in the bone dragon's body. This was no longer just a bone dragon, but a Lich dragon. The Lich's powerful strength and the bone dragon's destructive power fused into one. With a casual flap of its giant wings, a fierce energy flowed into the surroundings. Its 30-meter-long body was covered in a powerful energy and there was not a single blind spot from head to toe. However, when the Lich dragon was formed, it immediately felt a strong attractive force that quickly stole its energy. This fellow was none other than the little fox. The Lich dragon angrily roared and with a lightning-fast speed, a giant flaming dragon claw suddenly slammed into the little fox. It was like slamming an ant to death as it slammed the little fox into the ground. The wild strength caused the surrounding several dozen meters to collapse. Dolores was shocked. Lord Demon God. A gray mist appeared on Chu Tian's shoulder and the little fox suddenly turned around and came back. There was no way around it. The Lich dragon was too strong. It was different from the undead monsters that didn't have any thoughts. The Lich dragon still had the Lich's memories and wisdom, even the Lich's spells. The Lich was clearly on guard against the little fox. Therefore, it used a secret technique to seal the soul flame. As long as the soul flame was still there, the Lich dragon wouldn't be destroyed. As for the energy that was sucked away, it didn't count for anything. The Lich dragon didn't care at all. As long as it was within several dozen miles, the Lich dragon could directly absorb energy from the undead towers. Its energy was endless and there was no way to defeat it. The Lich dragon's giant body circled in the sky. Although it had been turned into a Lich dragon, the ceremony did not stop. Rather it became even more ferocious and if this continued, Green City would be destroyed in at most an hour. Stop him. Clark led the gnomes to make a move. Giant logs rose from the ground and each log was several dozen meters long. They were all covered in runes that wrapped around the Lich dragon's body. Who would have thought that before this energy could be added to the Lich dragon, a flame would come out of the Lich dragon's mouth and instantly burn everything to ashes. This flame did not dissipate because of this and when the flame fell on the sea of skeletons, it was like a flame falling into alcohol as it quickly spread in all directions. Large amounts of skeleton warriors were ignited by the flames. Not only were these skeletons not destroyed when they were ignited, rather it was like they were filled with a powerful energy. Their bodies were covered in flames and whether it was their speed or strength, they all increased by several times. Their madness increased by over 100 times as they wildly attacked like a swarm of bloodthirsty ants. Die here and become one of us. The Lich dragon's emotionless voice reverberated through the sky and could be heard even from several dozen miles away. Several dozen undead towers filled its body with energy and the Lich dragon's aura became stronger and stronger. At this time in the center of the sea of burning undead, there was also a majestic dragon's roar. Yoda's 1-meter-tall body turned into a green dragon that was over 10 meters tall. A burning dragon's breath was released and several hundred skeleton warriors were burned to ashes. Druid? Your strength is far too lacking. The Lich dragon charged down and the green dragon charged up. These two powerful beings released dragon's breath at the same time and the two flames released sizzling sounds. Finally the two giant figures collided with each other and the Lich dragon pressed the green dragon to the ground. Both sides began a fierce battle. The green dragon was only several meters long and the Lich dragon was over 30 meters long, so the green dragon did not have any advantage in size. Not to mention that Yoda was injured and the Lich dragon was not only strong, it also had an inexhaustible energy. Yoda could not beat the other side. As expected, the two dragons fiercely attacked each other at the same time. The green dragon spat out a dragon flame filled with the aura of life, burning most of the Lich dragon's wings. The Lich dragon's death energy condensed into flames that burned the green dragon's back and abdomen, causing large pieces of rotten flesh to fall down like rain. The green dragon's life force was very strong. If it was a normal creature, even if it was a mammoth, this flame would have turned it into an undead mammoth. The green dragon was clearly not lightly injured. The flames on the lich dragon's left wing were covered by the black energy and were extinguished in just a few seconds. It did not seem like it had suffered any damage at all. Yoda could not last more than a few minutes. Now that the others were surrounded by the sea of skeletons, it would be hard for them to support him. Even if they had a chance to support him, could they pose a threat to this lich dragon with infinite strength? Too weak. The lich dragon sent the injured green dragon flying several meters with a single attack. The wounds on the lich dragon's body quickly healed with the undead energy. You are not worthy of Green City. Eternal darkness and death will give you eternity. You think you've already won? When the lich dragon heard this voice, it was a bit stunned. It found that this unfathomable human had taken advantage of its battle with the druid to jump onto the altar. What do you want to do? What do I want to do? Chu Tian stood in the center of the altar's array and released his nine-eyed demon god source spirit. An aura that looked down on the world seemed to suppress the lich dragon. Chu Tian's eyes had already turned an ash-gray color. This was the color of death energy. Your array is too crude. I just casually looked at it and found the method to control it. Chu Tian suddenly clapped his hands together. In that instant, the wind and clouds changed. The sky was filled with surging waves of energy and the undead towers all around began to tremble. The lich dragon's mind that had not fluctuated in several hundred years suddenly had a ripple as it was filled with a feeling of shock. Impossible, this array was dug out by me from the ruins and I used 300 years to perfect it before I could control it. Chu Tian used his actions to answer the lich dragon. The array in the sky began to change. The runes began to reform and the formation began to change, gradually turning into a new source energy array. The energy that had been sent out, in just a short few seconds, began to gather in the direction of the basin. A huge wave of ripples spread out. The lich dragon found that it was gradually losing control of the surrounding undead. The large group of undead attacking Clark and the others all stopped like a machine that had been shut down. When they started up again, they all turned around and charged at the lich dragon. These undead were controlled by the lich's undead towers and now Chu Tian had taken control of the lich's undead towers. The lich dragon had lost control of the undead army. Clark, Yoda, and Dolores all revealed looks of shock. What did taking control from the lich's hands mean? Not only did it require strength, it wasn't enough for Chu Tian to control the altar, he also needed to have higher attainments in the death domain than the lich. The lich dragon gave an angry roar and gave up on the heavily injured green dragon. Its large body flew into the sky and shattered hundreds of skeletons. It charged at Chu Tian on the altar, but when it got close to the altar, the lich dragon hit a giant gray barrier and bounced back. Chu Tian gave a laugh. You've worked hard to gather this energy. If you fought it safely, you would have won. But you gave up the altar to protect the undead towers. This is putting the cart before the horse and making a big mistake. It seems like becoming a lich did not make your brain any smarter. Now we can properly play around. Chu Tian completely controlled the altar. The altar was equivalent to a controller, or it could be said to be an encrypted controller. All the energy in the undead towers was controlled by the altar. The lich was too confident and did not think that other than him, there was no one else who could control the altar. Now he was paying the price for his mistake. A few minutes ago, the ruler of this basin was the lich. At this moment, the ruler had become Chu Tian. Chapter 435. Necromancy was one of the rare attributes. There were very few cultivators with innate necromancy talent on the continent and there were even fewer top scholars in this field. The lich was one of the best and had the qualifications to become an undead sage, so he had the qualifications to be arrogant and confident. This array was dug out from the ruins and the lich had studied it for a long time before putting it into practice. How could an outsider see through it with a single glance? It was because he was too confident or because he was too rational. The lich left the altar to stop Chu Tian from destroying the undead towers. Who would have thought that it would backfire? Like this, even if he fused with the bone dragon, the Lich's advantage would be gone. The Lich dragon knew that controlling the altar meant controlling everything in the valley. All the power gathered in this place would be controlled by Chu Tian, and when Chu Tian used this power, he would become an invincible existence. The Lich dragon could only hope that Chu Tian could kill him when he had just started controlling the altar, so he still had a chance to make a comeback. The Lich dragon condensed a large amount of blue and green flames that turned into a wave of flames that shot towards the altar. However, when the altar was attacked, it was blocked by a thick undead energy. Even with the Lich dragon's power, it could not break through. He was disappointed. Chu Tian was already in complete control of the situation. Chu Tian. While controlling the array, he shouted, "Do you not know how strong this altar's control is? Just surrender." The Lich dragon of course did not surrender. Its body was filled with blue flames that suddenly came out of its skeleton and exploded like fireworks. There were countless blue lights that were like tentacles that fell onto the surrounding undead towers, connecting all of them together. Chu Tian was a bit stunned. This fellow really did have some skills. Connecting itself to the undead tower, even if the altar's control was taken away, the Lich dragon could still absorb energy from the undead tower. After all, the undead tower was personally made by the Lich, so he was very familiar with the structure of it. In just a few seconds, Chen Xiaobei was already dead. The flames in the Lich dragon's body became more than 10 times stronger. The blue and green flames flowed out of its body like crystals, forming a solid shell on the surface of its body. This terrifying skeleton dragon actually turned into a giant dragon carved out of crystal in an extremely short amount of time. Everyone's expression changed drastically. The Lich dragon could actually do this. If it was like this, even if Chu Tian controlled the altar, he wouldn't be able to defeat the Lich dragon. The Lich dragon relied on the power of the undead towers, and its strength was hard to imagine. Chu Tian was too weak, he had no way of defeating the Lich dragon. Roar! The almost solidified flame energy on the Lich dragon's body continued to condense, turning from blue to dark blue before gradually turning gray. This was already an undead monster that had never been heard of before. The skeletons under the Lich dragon were shaken by this roar and fell down like harvested wheat. The soul flames in their skulls were scattered and they were instantly killed by this aura. But at this time, the death energy that the Lich had been pouring into the sky over the past few days condensed back bit by bit. Like a giant bolt of lightning, it suddenly fell down on the altar that Chu Tian was on. The sky collapsed. The sky collapsed. It was like a large hole had been opened in the sky and countless streams of ash-black energy wildly poured down like a waterfall. The energy that the Lich had prepared to destroy Green City in a single blow had been completely withdrawn at this moment. It completely surrounded the altar and turned into a black ocean. Quickly run! When everyone saw the black waves rushing towards them, they cried out in alarm. This was not something they could help with. If they were to be engulfed by the sea of death, they would turn into undead monsters in an instant. Everyone quickly retreated from the area. When they looked back, the entire basin was pitch black like a large bowl of black liquid. Everything had already been submerged and no one knew what was happening inside. At this time, a crazy roar resounded in the Black Sea. An undead dragon, whose entire body was grayish-black, as if made of crystal, flapped his huge wings and soared into the sky. His whole body was surrounded by the aura of countless vengeful spirits. He opened his huge mouth, and the surrounding energy quickly gathered towards him. In just an instant, a black energy ball with a diameter of 3 to 4 meters was formed. The black energy ball was still wildly expanding with countless bolts of lightning surrounding it. The might of this attack was not inferior to the attack from the Lich's undead tower. Clark's face sunk. With this monster's strength, perhaps even a spirit transformation cultivator would find it hard to deal with it. I think the city lord is in danger. Chu Tian had already released the energy to deal with Green City, so Green City was completely safe now. But with this terrifying undead dragon here, wouldn't Green City find it hard to live in peace? After several generations of gnome experts, there were no spirit transformation cultivators guarding them. If they met this kind of attack, perhaps they would suffer heavy losses. Right now only Chu Tian had a way to deal with these undead monsters. If Chu Tian lost and was killed by the Lich Dragon, it would be hard for Green City to avoid a calamity. Clark and the gnomes had no choice but to admit a fact. The human they had always looked down on, the human they were not willing to accept, was actually an important person supporting the survival of Green City. He had basically become Green City's only hope. The Lich Dragon flapped its wings and the black hole-like energy ball flew into the center of the basin. Wherever it went, space trembled and the momentum was earth-shattering. It was very shocking to hear. At this time, a giant black sword flew into the sky and cut the energy ball in half. The black ocean quickly gathered in the center and finally formed an incomparably large figure. He looked like a 10-eyed demon god that could support the heavens and earth. 9 of his eyes were closed and only a single ash-black eye was open. He was incomparably large and had a pair of wings on his back. He looked down on all living beings and he held a giant black sword in his hand, just like a war god from the underworld. What is this? When things developed to this point, everything had already surpassed one's imagination. The Lich Dragon could feel that this powerful demon god monster was actually created by Chu Tian using the power of the array and the undead energy. As for how he did it, the Lich Dragon did not know. Even with his 2,000 years of knowledge, he had never heard of such a terrifying and powerful cultivation technique in this world. Not to mention him. Even the most intelligent person in the world would not know that this cultivation technique was called the Demon and God 9 transformations. The demon god gave a low angry roar and slowly raised its giant sword. The black aura and the surroundings all surged towards the giant sword dragon, finally turning into flames that soared into the sky. Chu Tian could not maintain this state for long. Therefore he gathered all of them together to decide victory. The solidified crystals on the Lich Dragon's body began to boil again and the flames engulfed its entire body, making it look like it had doubled in size. It looked like a black phoenix that came out of the underworld, directly using its burning body to release an earth-shattering attack. The demon god raised its giant sword glow and slammed it down on the black phoenix's body. The energy released this time created a shockwave that created quite a large storm for several dozen kilometers. Break for me. The god demon sword's destructive power and boundless deathly energy fused together, instantly exploding forth with astonishing power. The god demon sword sliced through the black phoenix's head, and by the time the blade came out from its tail, the god demon's sword had reached its limit and exploded. Chu Tian was sent flying and heavily fell to the ground. At this moment, his body was injured both inside and out. Regardless of whether it was his spirit or strength, he was severely overdrawn. He would probably need at least 10 days to half a month to recover. But it didn't matter. The Lich Dragon was cut in half and all of its energy dissipated. The dragon skeleton that was pieced together by the secret death technique fell apart and large amounts of fragments spread over several miles. The death energy in the death basin completely dissipated. Everything returned to normal in a short period of time. It's over. It's all over. This shocking battle made those who personally witnessed it unable to recover for a long time. The little fox was wildly swallowing the death energy in the death basin and cleaning up the aftermath. After around 2 hours, the Green City army rushed over. When they saw the messy basin, they were all stunned. This was a battle that changed the landscape. This kind of battle was something even peak true spirit cultivators could not do. Finally the immobile Chu Tian was carried out. Although the side effects were large, Chu Tian's consciousness was still clear. He did not waste words and just ordered Clark, immediately send people to seal off the basin, no one is allowed to enter. Clark did not dare underestimate Chu Tian at all, understood, Sir City Lord. Not long after Chu Tian was sent back to Green City, everyone in Green City knew of Chu Tian's bravery. Chu Tian's strength alone had saved the entire Green City. He was the savior of the green religion and the gnomes, which created a large response in Green City. Everything that followed was logical. On the third day, the Green Religion's gnome elders announced to the entire city that the acting city lord Chu Tian had officially become the sole city lord of Green City. The entire Green City had to listen to Chu Tian's orders. Although there were many twists and turns and many changes, he finally sat on the city lord's throne. The first thing Chu Tian announced was a name change. To welcome a new beginning for Green City and to represent that Chu Tian had officially become the city lord, Green City could no longer be called Green City, it would change its name. From today onwards, the Forest of Chaos Green City would forever become a thing of the past. This city would be renamed to Miracle City, Miracle City. This was a city in the center of the Forest of Chaos. Although it had an outstanding location, it was not a very remarkable city and it was not a very strong city. Miracle City was still a mess. This moment would inevitably be recorded in history. Chapter 436. There were too many messes in Miracle City. Although the internal problems had been solved, the external threats were still very serious. The famine caused by the shamans had not been solved yet, the undead had polluted the southern forests, and Miracle City's environment was very special. Being too weak at this moment, it was hard to avoid conflicts with the surrounding large powers. Adding in the change of ruler, the top and bottom needed to work together, so they were in a period of chaos. The merchants in the city had all left and Miracle City had lost their source of income. Dolores had been reporting to Chu Tian's sick bed for an entire hour and she still hadn't finished. Enough, enough, don't say any more. Chu Tian sat up. Although he had recovered from 5-6 days of resting in bed, Chu Tian was still in a weak state. I will find helpers to clean up this mess, you don't need to report everything to me. Where is Clark? Quickly call him over. Dolores was speechless. How could a city lord act like this? Clark came to the city lord's fort and immediately cupped his hands to Chu Tian as he said, reporting to the city lord, as expected, we found that the basin is connected to a deep underground space. There are all kinds of ancient creature skeletons and there are countless undead monsters wandering around. However, we still don't know why there is such a strong death energy. Because the environment inside is too dangerous, the scouts don't dare enter. Chu Tian rubbed his chin in thought. He thought of a possibility, but he couldn't confirm it for now. Don't worry about it for now, I'll find time to personally take a look. Clark came over holding a black crystal in his hand. When we were collecting the Lich Dragon's remains, we found this in the Lich Dragon's skull. This seems to be the Lich's soul flame, should we destroy it? In order to resist the little fox's swallowing ability, the Lich had used a secret technique to seal its soul flame. It was because of this that the soul flame wasn't destroyed in the end. Chu Tian took the crystal in his hand, a 2,000-year-old Lich's soul flame, this is a very precious thing. It would be a pity to destroy it, I have other uses for it. The soul flame was the heart and the brain of an undead. Most of the undead's power was sealed in their soul fire. The memories and thinking abilities of the intelligent undead were also produced by the fluctuations of their soul fire. Therefore, for undead creatures, the soul fire was a very important part. They could abandon any part of their body, but the soul fire was indispensable. The Lich's soul fire was damaged to a certain extent, and the Lich's independent consciousness should have been completely dispersed. This damaged soul fire was like a living creature whose brain had been damaged and turned into a vegetable. Although it had lost the ability to think independently, Chu Tian believed that if he could give it some proper stimulation, this soul fire would still be able to continue burning and operating. None of this was important. Chu Tian asked the question he was most concerned about, how's the matter I asked you to do? Although space attribute crystals are very rare, the gnomes have some in stock. We have already completed the work according to the blueprints and methods provided by the city lord. Clark hesitated for a moment before asking, space attribute materials are rare, but there aren't many places where they can be used. We don't know why the city lord wanted to build that strange tower. There weren't many places where spatial attribute materials could be used. It was mainly in the creation of storage equipment. The research on spatial energy in this era was too limited, but even if it was like this, spatial attribute materials were still an expensive and rare material. Chu Tian had given Clark a blueprint 3 days ago and had Clark bring the gnomes to complete the things on the blueprint. This time, he had used most of the spatial attribute materials in Green City's stock, which made the gnomes feel very pained. No rush. When Chu Tian heard that it was finished, his mood immediately became very good. Let's go, I'll bring you to have a look. In a small valley in the center of Miracle City, there was a 4-meter-tall steeple being built. There was a giant disc beside the steeple that was embedded with large amounts of space attribute crystals. Chu Tian carefully inspected it and finally made sure that there were no mistakes before carefully taking out the eye of the star. The eye of the star had been carefully polished, so it was only 2/3 of its original size. When the eye of the star was placed in the center of the steeple, it immediately connected to the steeple. An energy quickly filled the entire steeple and disc, instantly activating this strange thing. A starlight was released from the top of the steeple and the aura of spatial energy filled the surroundings. The gnomes were a bit stunned. Spatial energy was one of the most mysterious and elusive energies in the world, but Chu Tian could arrange it in a stable and orderly manner. This should be fine. Chu Tian took out the communication device to contact Oldman's small town. The people on the other side had been waiting for a long time, so Chu Tian didn't waste words and directly said, "You can come over now." Chu Tian hung up the communication device and made a retreating gesture. No one knew what Chu Tian was doing, but he wouldn't do something meaningless. Clark and Dolores had personally seen Chu Tian place the eye of the star in the steeple, so they remembered how important the eye of the star was to Chu Tian. This also meant that the steeple did not have a normal ability. At this time, the steeple suddenly lit up. The space crystals began to release energy. Everyone felt like the ground was being affected by some kind of energy as it began to slightly tremble. There was a dazzling flash of light and on the disc beside the steeple, large amounts of human figures appeared. Chu Tian. Before the light disappeared, a surprised and excited voice sounded in Chu Tian's ears. There was a soft and boneless body that jumped into his embrace, giving him a large hug. If it wasn't Yingying, who else could it be? Chu Tian picked up Yingying. "How is it? I didn't lie to you, right? It really is mysterious." Meng Yingying's face turned a bit red and she immediately left his embrace. "How did you do it?" "We were clearly in Oldman's small town, but when we opened the scroll, we were instantly brought here. This is the effect of the transport tower." Chu Tian proudly looked at his work and said, "Miracle City has the first transport tower on the continent. Whether it is the ends of the earth or any corner of the world, as long as you use the spatial transportation technology, you can instantly arrive in our Miracle City. The scroll I gave you using the space warehouse was actually made from the eye of the star fragment and space crystal powder. It has the spatial coordinates of Miracle City's transport tower recorded on it, so it can complete a group transport." It wasn't just Meng Yingying that was sent over this time. Meng Qingguo, Nangong Yun, Chen Bingyu, Vivian, and most of the main members of Miracle Commerce had all arrived. "Ha, ha, young miss, Vivian, Nangong, long time no see." Chu Tian found several small abysses. Lulu, you're here too. That's great. The little flower fairy Lulu had brought her sisters here. Her face was filled with surprise at this moment. Meng Qingguo, Nangong Yun, and Chen Bingyu didn't react at all. They couldn't understand no matter how they thought about it. They had been in Oldman's small town a moment ago, but they had suddenly come to Miracle City in the blink of an eye. The two places were separated by tens of thousands of miles. They actually crossed it in the blink of an eye. This was simply a miracle. The most shocked was Vivian. Vivian herself was a spatial talent. Her maximum teleportation distance was not more than a few hundred miles, because the further the distance, the harder it was to lock onto space. She had never heard of anyone in this world who could cross a distance of tens of thousands of miles in one go. "I know you have many questions you want to ask, but now isn't the time. Let me introduce you." Chu Tian turned to the people who were like blocks of wood and said, "This is the gnome great elder Clark, this is the Fox clan's demonic god priest Dolores, and this is..." Clark's face was filled with excitement. "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." "Then who are these people?" "This beautiful and noble human young miss who has both beauty and intelligence is the vice chairman of Miracle Commerce and also Miracle City's vice city lord." Chu Tian then pointed at the petite Vivian on the side and said, "This elven young miss has an even bigger background. She is the Eternal Forest's elven king's daughter Vivian and will be Miracle City's vice city lord from now on." Meng Qingguo and Vivian, they were the two vice city lords appointed by the elven king. Clark didn't know who Meng Qingguo was, but he had heard of Vivian. This was the elven king's most talented daughter and he felt it was very strange at the time. Why didn't the elven king directly give his daughter the position of city lord and instead gave a nameless human such an important position? Although Vivian wasn't considered strong right now, she was still stronger than this human, right? Not to mention that she was the elven king's daughter. If Vivian was in the city, the other powers would have to consider if they could deal with the elven king's revenge if they wanted to. Of course. Now Clark understood. After seeing Chu Tian's abilities and methods, the gnomes no longer looked down on this seemingly young but incomparably powerful human. They had complete trust in the elven king's ability to judge people. "It's not convenient to talk here, let's go to the city lord's main hall." The two sides naturally needed some time to get used to each other. Although Chu Tian had already become the city lord, the gnomes were still the main power of Miracle City. Chu Tian would need the gnomes' resources and manpower for a long time, so there were some things that needed to be clearly explained. At the very least, Chu Tian wanted the gnomes to know what Miracle Commerce did. "Wah, boss, it can't be." Nangong Yun shouted while flying on the griffin, "Our city is too big, I've never seen a city like this before. It can fit several dozen southern summer imperial cities together." Meng Yingying was also very shocked by Miracle City's scenery. Although there was still a faint undead aura in the air, it did not stop her from enjoying the beautiful scenery of the city. The surrounding mountains were natural walls and barriers, while the interior was vast and incomparably beautiful. There were plains, valleys, mountain ranges, and lakes. This was truly a rare treasure land. Too big. Only there were too few people. If it wasn't for the scattered castles and settlements, everyone would have thought they had come to a paradise surrounded by mountains. Who would have thought that this was a city? Meng Qingguo was very excited. Miracle Commerce had developed for over a year and this was the first time they had an official territory. Chapter 437. The first high-level closed-door meeting was held in the City Lord's castle. The main participants this time were the high-level members of Miracle Commerce and the original Green City high-level members. Because of the change in management, most of the gnomes were no longer in important positions. From the City Lord, Vice City Lord, Finance, Military, and etc., they all needed to be replaced. This meeting was mainly hosted by Meng Qingguo. This noble and beautiful human, in the next few hours, she made all the gnomes present look at her in a new light. Meng Qingguo had a strong learning ability, allowing her to grasp over 20 different races' languages. She used a very fluent elven language to communicate with Clark and the other gnomes. The talent Meng Qingguo displayed in her speech was not something normal scholars could have, which made the gnomes look at her in a new light. Of course. This was nothing. Meng Qingguo formally introduced Miracle Commerce. Her thoughts were very clear, even small products like canned food and electric lights were carefully introduced. The source energy batteries and source energy weapons were introduced in detail, not to mention the space warehouse and transportation technology, the video and communication technology, and the currently developing virtual spiritual technology. The gnomes were not like the inflexible elves, they had a strong desire to explore. They were a group of people who liked to study and most of the gnomes considered themselves scholars. Miracle Commerce's series of grand and shocking inventions, each one was like a bomb that the gnomes couldn't recover for a while. What was called research? What was called invention? The gnomes had built one of the best underground research bases in the forest, using several hundred years to do all kinds of research, but it couldn't compare to 1/100th of the Yun sect that Chu Tian had built in a year. Although this fact made the gnomes feel helpless, it also made them feel incomparably excited. Although Miracle Commerce did not have a strong strength, but Miracle Commerce had an incomparably strong potential. This was a company filled with creativity. Just the transport tower and the space warehouse, these two things created from spatial technology were enough to bring endless possibilities to Miracle City. The Forest of Chaos had a complex environment and each city was sealed off, not to mention the outside countries. It was because of this that although the Forest of Chaos was rich in resources, it had always been in a very poor state. If the transport tower and the space warehouse could be popularized, people could be transported to people and things could be transported, how convenient would that be? This was definitely something that could be done. Not to mention the source energy weapon technology. This would be enough to make up for his lack of strength in the near future. I plan to merge the Yun sect and the gnomes research base. Meng Qinggu said, with the gnomes and the Yun sect's high-level leaders, what do the elders think? The gnomes were still in shock and had not recovered yet. Clark hurriedly asked, can we join the research and development of these new technologies? Meng Qinggu nodded with a faint smile, the gnome scholars are famous on the continent. With you joining the Yun sect's large project, I believe that the Yun sect's results will be even stronger than before. Good, good. Great. The gnomes were filled with excitement and they all agreed to join. This kind of cooperation was very beneficial to Miracle Commerce. Obtaining the best research equipment and talents in the Forest of Chaos and integrating all the resources of Green City, this was no different from gaining nothing. If other powers took over Green City, they would have to pay for the gnomes' research, but it was completely different if Miracle Commerce took over. He was purely investing in himself. It didn't matter if he spent tens of thousands of source stones every month. Meng Qinggu never thought it would be this smooth, the gnomes did not even give her any conditions. Perhaps this was the difference between different races. If it was a human sitting in front of them, they would have asked for a sky-high price and how to divide the research results. The gnomes did not need this, which meant that their thoughts were too simple. There weren't many races on the continent that were as greedy as humans. This was also why most of the gnomes did not like to interact with humans. Now that the introductions have been made, I think everyone should have a basic understanding of each other. Chu Tian, who had not spoken since the beginning, stood up at this moment. We should properly discuss how to clean up the mess in front of us. There were several problems that Miracle City was facing. First, there was a lack of people. Miracle City had less than 1 million people and most of them were gnomes. There were no merchants doing business here and no one excavating the rich resources and market here. Second, there was a lack of finances. Before Chu Tian came, Miracle City was already struggling to make ends meet. Now that they had experienced several large-scale disturbances, there were many things to do, so they needed money. Miracle Commerce's several tens of thousands of source stones weren't enough, it could at most quench their thirst for a while, but problems would appear soon. Third, they were weak. Miracle City was just too weak. With just a few shamans and a single lich, they actually almost overturned a forest city. This would simply make people laugh to death if they knew about it. It had to be known that as long as it was a forest city, they were all large powers that could ignore the dark forest laws. Miracle City was too weak, they didn't even have a single spirit transformation cultivator guarding it. Fourth, there was a diplomatic problem. Miracle City's background was the Eternal Forest, but everyone knew that the Eternal Forest was too closed off. Hoping for the elves to help them was better than hoping for a meat pie to fall from the sky. Although the Eternal Forest's name was a deterrent, it was hard to stop the large powers from coveting it. It was fine if it was a normal power, but they were afraid of attracting a true giant. There were many other large and small problems. These were only the most important of the many problems. Although he was the city lord of Green City, he still couldn't sleep well. The most important thing now was to solve these problems. The main plan now was to expand Miracle City's population and strength. First he had to integrate the internal strength and then he had to recruit people from the outside. Miracle City still had the shaman religion and the druid religion to recruit. The shamans led by Luz and Miracle City were basically in the same boat. As long as they had enough conditions, this power could be gradually absorbed by Chu Tian. The druids were a bit troublesome. Although the druids were very strong, the druids were too arrogant and hard to tame, so they couldn't be recruited in most situations. But the druids had already seen Chu Tian's abilities and Prophet Yoda was filled with admiration for Chu Tian. As long as they found a suitable standard, it wasn't impossible to form a cooperative relationship with them. These two powers had to be digested, but this was far from enough. Miracle Commerce needed to recruit more people and elites. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu looked at the locals at the same time. The Fox tribe, the Minotaurs, and etc. These large tribes surrounded Miracle City and these tribes were quite strong, so the locals often influenced the city's governance. In the battle with the Lich this time, the locals had a much closer relationship with Miracle City. How long could this relationship last? The locals almost attacked the city together a while ago, it wasn't impossible for this matter to happen again. Other than that, most of the locals liked to live around Miracle City. It wasn't just because it was convenient, the most important reason was that most of these fellows were forest robbers. Wherever there was a city, there would be caravans coming and going. These rich caravans naturally attracted their attention. So even if the locals maintained a good relationship with Miracle City, it was hard to stop them from causing trouble nearby. This was a hidden danger to Miracle Commerce in the end. Exterminate them? This wasn't realistic and they couldn't kill them all. Win them all over? That was even more impossible. These fellows didn't have high quality and if they all moved into the city at once, Miracle City would be hard to manage. Not to mention that after moving a group, the locals from other places would move in and form another group. What should they do? Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu carefully discussed it and finally thought of a good method. The next day, the news of the forest was spread. Miracle City's large conscription had begun. The elite warriors of each tribe could become soldiers, with food, lodging, and pay. The treatment was not bad and the tribes could receive Miracle City's food allowance. They could also use the conscription rate to exchange for a place to live in Miracle City. This news caused a stir among the locals. Because of the shaman's disturbance, the famine had not recovered yet and the lack of food was still a large problem. Miracle City's conscription provided them with good food and drinks, it was not something the tribes could compare to. Not to mention that soldiers could be promoted to officials, gaining glory for their tribes, gaining allowances for their tribes, and exchanging for their families and children to live in Miracle City. This was a very good thing. Miracle City released the news. The first batch was to recruit 30,000 people. They would serve for 3 to 5 years and whether the soldiers chose to retire or not, Miracle City would not restrict their freedom. Miracle Commerce sent flyers to the various tribes and prepared large amounts of loudspeakers to spread the news throughout the forest. Do you want to create a future with Miracle Commerce? Do you want to break away from your monotonous life? Do you want to stand out? Do you want to earn money to support your family? Do you want to live a better life? Participate in Miracle City's large conscription right now. As long as you pass through the layers of selection, you can become a glorious Miracle City soldier. Miracle City not only provides food, lodging, and training, there is also a series of unexpected benefits that will allow you to have no worries. The forest was instantly filled with a stir. Where could they find this kind of treatment? Not to mention this time of famine. Even cultivating for a few years was a good thing. Anyways, the resources needed for cultivation like pills and potions were all subsidized, so it was much more comfortable than staying in the tribes. Not to mention the beautiful future that Miracle City had outlined, it was possible to become a soldier. Suddenly, there was a wave of soldiers in the forest. Countless locals who were confident in their martial strength all picked up their weapons and set off. They rushed over to Miracle City in order to show off their skills at the conscription ceremony. Miracle City's first batch of 30,000 people. But the conscription would be held every year or even every season. The conscription was not limited to the surroundings, it included places even further away. The conscription was not limited to fighting, it also included logisticians. If one was skilled in forging, gathering, or mining, they could also participate. This not only guaranteed that miracle commerce would have enough soldiers in the future. It was equal to creating several tens of thousands of jobs and adding several 100,000 jobs in the future. This was enough to greatly improve the lives of the tribes, and it could unite the surrounding tribes, increasing the development of miracle commerce's population. Of course, the disadvantages were very clear. Raising soldiers was not a small expense. Miracle commerce did not just need to provide food and pay, it also needed to provide cultivation resources for the soldiers. Even if an elite soldier used a low-grade source stone every month, the 30,000 soldiers would have 30,000 low-grade source stones. This was already catching up to the Gnome Research Base's budget. This kind of expenditure was hard for most forest cities to bear, and it was because of this that it was hard to find a regular army in the forest. Each city's defensive power was the power of the ruling tribe, living a normal life, but when there was trouble, the entire city would become a soldier. Miracle City was the first city to industrialize, formalize, and professionalize the military. Chapter 438. Miracle City's recruitment was in full swing. Whether it was the minotaurs, ogres, gnomes, or goblins, they all came to Miracle City to show off their skills. Who told Miracle City to treat them too well? It was only the registration period, but there were around 40,000 people participating. The official selection would begin in 3 days, so it would be packed with people. Miracle Commerce had already begun to prepare the site. Dolores was the city lord's assistant as well as Miracle City's chief financial officer, so she already understood Miracle City's financial situation. Although Miracle Commerce was considered rich, with this kind of spending, there would be problems in less than 2 months. At that time, not only would Miracle Commerce suffer heavy losses, wouldn't the credibility of the new city lord fall? How was this a recruitment? This was simply asking for her old life. Dolores quickly went to find Chu Tian, but when she entered the city lord's office, she didn't see even a shadow of Chu Tian. There was only Meng Qingwu sitting there reading various documents. "Are you looking for Sir City Lord?" Meng Qingwu looked up at Dolores. "It's really unfortunate. He brought Yingying, Nangong, and Vivian to build the site and prepare for the recruitment ceremony. I'm afraid he won't be back for several days." Dolores had a depressed expression. "I'll go find him." "Don't worry, sit down and drink some tea first. It's useless for you to find him, I'm in charge of the city." Meng Qingwu revealed a faint smile. Meeting a hands-off boss like Chu Tian, she didn't know if she should be happy or depressed. "I know what you're worried about, but relax, there won't be any problems." How did Chu Tian attract a beautiful silver-haired fox girl? When Meng Qingwu saw Dolores, she couldn't help feeling a bit depressed. However, she wasn't as obvious as Meng Yingying. Moreover, Meng Qingwu was a very rational person, so she was quite satisfied with Dolores. At least she was more hardworking than Nangong and Yingying. With this city lord assistant, Meng Qingwu's work would be much easier. "You're new here, so you don't know much about us. It's inevitable that you're suspicious of us." She stood up and poured a cup of tea for Dolores. "I won't hide it from you. I also walked this path in the beginning. But you will soon discover that these worries are unnecessary. The things that Miracle Commerce can do are far beyond your imagination." Chu Tian may look like a hypocrite, but in fact, he often makes rash decisions, and he has his reasons. "Thank you." Dolores squeezed out a smile on her enchanting face as she held a cup of elven green tea. "I just feel that conscription isn't worth it, the cost and return are not proportional. This kind of treatment will add a large burden and hidden danger to Miracle City. You're underestimating Chu Tian too much." Meng Qingwu revealed a dangerous smile that made people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. To Dolores, this human beauty was like the calm surface of the sea. Although there were no waves on the surface, the water was actually very deep. She was not a reckless person. Her confidence and calmness infected the people around her. Do you think he only needs an army? These several tens of thousands of people are not just an army, they are also several tens of thousands of laborers. You should know the abilities of Miracle Commerce. With the space warehouse and transport tower, we can easily establish trade relations with any city, any country, and any race. We can mine resources from any place in the world and we can develop trade with any power. In the long run, what does recruiting this bit of army count for? Dolores was a bit stunned. Miracle Commerce is an outsider without a foundation. Although the gnomes are a reliable race, they are not of the same race. This means that our rule will be different from other cities. Our foundation is weak, we don't have the power of the clan, and we don't have the ability to resist risks and sudden changes. So, creating a regular army is a necessity. Whether it is in the long run or in the short run, this is a necessary step. To truly control Miracle City, we need to have the power of a ruler. What do you think? Dolores felt that it was reasonable from her imagination, then in terms of finances. I have something to tell you. I know that Chu Tian has already made you the chief financial officer of the city. I am prepared to create a business department and you will be the business manager in the future. Meng Qinggu seemed like she had already prepared something. I hope that all the capable and talented people of the Fox clan will join this department and create a large number of caravans. Your Fox clan are natural-born merchants, I believe that you will have the ability to do this well. Dolores excitedly stood up. This was definitely a good thing for the Fox clan. The Fox clan were naturally smart and had a very sensitive sense for money and benefits. Miracle City using the smart Fox clan to manage the caravans could be considered using good steel on the edge of a blade, and the Fox clan could greatly benefit from this. All right. Dolores said without even thinking, I'll immediately do it. The Heaven's Net airship signal has already covered the surrounding 10,000 miles. The first task I'll give you is to spread the communication, broadcasting, and cinemas, covering all the cities and tribes. Not only does this have a high business value, it can also increase the influence of Miracle Commerce and build a foundation for our future strategy. These technologies all had a large value waiting to be excavated. How could Dolores not know this? Now that Miracle Commerce was already moving to Miracle City, the space warehouse had sent over large amounts of communication devices, magnetic sound devices, and video players. There were several 100,000 of them in Miracle City, so the caravan's first task was to sell these things. Did these things still need to be sold? Perhaps they would all be sold out as soon as they were taken out. The Fox clan's task was not to sell out these goods, but rather to create more value. Not only was this a direct value, it was also a long-term value. For example, the broadcasting. Once this thing was placed in a tribe, the Miracle Commerce broadcasting station could be heard by them at all times. Any requests or announcements from Miracle Commerce could be sent to the entire forest as fast as possible. Meng Qinggu said, you don't need to worry too much, everything is under control. Miracle City is still very poor and weak, but I believe that in the near future, Miracle City will become a rich and powerful city. Dolores was also very confident in this. The manager of this city was a special company like Miracle Commerce. After a few days, the preparations were finished and the conscription ceremony officially began. This large group of forest warriors arrived in front of a large arena. This arena was temporarily built by Miracle Commerce from a castle, and it was now the location for the conscription screening. Miracle City's conscription was divided into several stages, with the first stage being the simplest. It was purely a contest of martial strength, allowing the participants to compete and be selected based on merit. The forest warriors began to whisper. This competition would inevitably have casualties, this temporary arena was just too small. If there were this many people competing, it wouldn't even take half a day for the entire arena to be torn apart. There was a giant screen hanging in the arena. A red-haired girl appeared on the screen. Warriors of the forest, thank you for your support of Miracle Commerce. Miracle Commerce's conscription competition is about to begin. You are very lucky, truly very lucky because you will be the first people to experience the virtual arena. Virtual arena. What was called the virtual arena? That fiery red-haired girl explained, this virtual arena is a product made by our Miracle Commerce using spiritual technology, allowing everyone to fight in the spiritual simulation space. Not only will they be able to display their full strength, what is even more precious is that there will be no injuries or deaths in the virtual arena. Each warrior can display everything they have learned without any worries. The faces of the forest warriors all changed. An arena made from a spiritual illusion space. People in this kind of environment, of course they wouldn't be injured or bleed. Other than that, I'll give everyone a bit of inside information. Nangong Yun announced a piece of exciting news. Miracle Commerce plans to build a wide range of virtual arenas in the Forest of Chaos. In the future, there will be large amounts of competitions with large prizes. I believe that the virtual arena will become one of the most popular entertainment projects in Miracle City and the Forest of Chaos. After the spiritual network is built in the future, people from all over the world will be able to participate in the competitions held by Miracle Commerce, creating millions of professional competitions. Everyone, please wait and see. Everyone was instantly stirred. This was just too crazy. There were no entertainment projects in this era. If the virtual arena was promoted on a large scale, they could create virtual spectator seats or connect image transfer mirrors to live broadcast. This would become a kind of entertainment project for the masses. This was a very popular thing in a martial world. Not only would it bring in large amounts of professional competitors of different cultivation realms, it would also bring in the gambling industry. Everyone enter in a line, don't be chaotic and listen to the staff. The forest warriors excitedly entered the arena. The virtual arena was no different from a normal arena, being divided into several large areas. There was a field in the middle of each area and it was surrounded by layers of terrace stands. However, everyone found a problem. There was a giant crystal embedded in the center of the arena. With this crystal releasing spiritual energy as the center, there was a very large source energy array covering the entire field. In the corners of the field, there were giant energy pillars and everyone could feel the energy fluctuations coming from under their feet. Everyone sit down. The virtual arena is about to open. Everyone relax and don't resist, this is completely harmless. After several thousand people filled the field, the energy pillars all around began to glow and the source energy array symbols lit up, finally connecting to the giant spiritual attributed crystal in the center. Almost in the next instant, spiritual energy was released, instantly covering everyone sitting in the large source energy array. The forest warriors were slightly stunned. When the forest warriors came back to their senses, they were shocked to find that they had appeared in a completely new place. None of their companions were missing, they had all been moved here. A grand arena appeared in front of them. The area here was more than 10 times larger than before and it was very dazzling. This group of country bumpkins had their eyes opened wide. This was too incredible. Coming to Miracle City this time was really worth it. Even if they couldn't join the army, seeing this kind of scene was worth it. Chapter 439. Chu Tian, tell me. Meng Yingying sat in the arena's lounge, her two slender and beautiful legs crossed. She first looked at the forest aborigines lining up in the lower hall, then looked at the several mirrors that were playing the battle scenes on the wall. Her delicate and beautiful face was not without pride as she said, "How is our virtual arena doing?" This was the first spiritual domain result of Meng Yingying's cooperation with the flower fairies. It could create a completely harmless spiritual space, allowing people to maintain the same abilities in the illusion as in the real world. Therefore, it was impossible to cause actual damage when fighting in the virtual arena. The most important thing was that Meng Yingying had completed the live broadcast of the virtual arena in the real world. Because the virtual arena used source energy arrays and crystals to create illusions, the illusions could be transmitted to the real world through several methods. Then it could be transmitted to a video player or a normal image transferring mirror, so people in the real world could see the battles in the virtual arena. After the spiritual network was established, people from all over the world could compete in the virtual arena. This kind of battle would not result in casualties or enmity, nor would it cause severe damage because of the battle. Those who pursued the path of martial arts could directly observe the duel of experts and comprehend it. Ordinary people could also directly appreciate this kind of unreserved duel and experience the art of combat. This would inevitably become a trend that people would chase after, and there was a large business potential hidden in it. When the virtual arena became popular in the future, even if it was just a small fee, it would be enough to make a large profit. Nan Gongyun was even more whimsical. She wanted to open a casino, she wanted to hold competitions, and she wanted to turn the virtual arena into a culture. Nan Gongyun was a very combative person. This kind of virtual arena was simply the best place for her to relax. She imagined that whether it was for combative people, gamblers, or ordinary people, the virtual arena would have a broad market. Meng Qingguo also expressed her support for this proposal. Chu Tian deliberately poured cold water on her. You're satisfied with this? I'm telling you, with this virtual arena of yours, I can find at least a dozen flaws. Impossible. Meng Yingying's almond-shaped eyes immediately widened, and then she felt a little guilty. You. Tell me about it. Chu Tian took a sip of tea and said, I've already noticed that the time in the virtual coliseum is half that of the real world, so what we're seeing in the real world isn't a live broadcast at all. When the battle in the virtual coliseum is over, the broadcast outside is only halfway through. Am I right? Stupid, stupid, stupid. Meng Yingying was worried that Chu Tian would really ask a question that would hit the nail on the head. She didn't expect him to be so mediocre after all. She said arrogantly, you should change your brain, you idiot. This is called business acumen, understand? This girl actually dares to lecture me. It had been too long since he had spanked her, and she was getting bolder and bolder. She could still talk about other things, but how could she talk about Chu Tian with her brain? Meng Yingying said, the virtual coliseum relies on tickets to make money. If the outside world and the virtual coliseum are both being broadcasted at the same time, who would buy tickets to go watch in the virtual coliseum? Moreover, slowing down the virtual coliseum will allow more matches to be held, saving time is money. The flower fairies have studied it with me. Although the spiritual world's time can be adjusted to 1/10 of the real world's time, that kind of situation requires people with strong spiritual energy to be able to adapt. After trying it out, we found that normal people can withstand half the flow of time. In order to adapt to the masses, we decided to design the virtual coliseum like this. Boss, I also want to talk to you, why haven't you improved at all? Nan Gongyun also began to criticize Chu Tian. Me and Yingying have followed elder sister Qingguo for so long, we've already begun to understand the way of doing business. Chu Tian never would have thought that with his outstanding reputation and intelligence, he would actually be left speechless by a stupid girl like Yingying. Even Nan Gongyun, his loyal follower, was looking down on him. This was truly a large stain on his life. This was just testing you. I wanted to see if you could create this kind of effect by chance. It seems like you're still sloppy, but what I really want to spend is not this. Alright, you don't need to say any more. Meng Yingying had finally teased Chu Tian. She didn't want to be pulled back by Chu Tian. She immediately said, Miracle City's popularity isn't enough and we can't make money fast enough, shouldn't we help elder sister a bit? Let her have less of a headache. You actually have this kind of heart. Tell me what you want to do. We can do this. Meng Yingying immediately whispered into Chu Tian's ear. Chu Tian nodded when he heard this. Although there were many ways to make money, this kind of method was a bit interesting. There were a large number of forest locals that came to Miracle City's recruitment. This was because Miracle City was completely open to the surrounding tribes during the recruitment period. Even if the forest locals had a wait-and-see attitude and didn't participate, they would at least pay attention to it. Most of them came to Miracle City to join in on the fun. Because of the attention brought by the recruitment, the arena would definitely become famous in the forest. This would be a very good boost to the company's popularity. There were some forest tribe chiefs and high-level members that came because they had people joining the army, so they naturally came to take a look. Recently, they had been hearing about how magical the virtual arena was every day. This made their hearts itch, wishing they could go in and test their skills. But it was a pity. The arena was not open right now. It was impossible for these people to join the army, so they could only suppress their curiosity and ask about the situation of the arena every day. But when they were bored, Miracle City released another piece of news. Miracle City was after the arena. Now they had opened another trial field. This trial field was different from the arena. The trial field was divided into 10 checkpoints, and each checkpoint would present an extremely difficult challenge. Miracle Commerce had set up very generous prizes. It said that whoever could break through to the 5th stage would be rewarded with 100 low-grade source stones, whoever could break through to the 8th stage would be rewarded with 1,000 low-grade source stones, and whoever could break through to the 10th stage would be rewarded with 10,000 low-grade source stones. Other than the generous source stone rewards, each stage would have a random gift. They were all top products of Miracle Commerce or unexpected surprises, they couldn't be missed. Of course the trial field wasn't free, each challenge required 2 source stones and one had to be at least in the true spirit realm to have the qualifications to challenge. This was simply made for the forest experts. Recently, these people's hearts had been itched by Miracle City's arena. Now that there was another trial field, how could they miss it? Wasn't it just 2 source stones? Even if these true spirit experts were poor, they wouldn't be unable to take out a trivial 2 source stones. This news had only been released for a few hours. 7-8 chiefs led 50-60 tribe experts to the trial field. The Minotaur chief Arnold was one of them. He anxiously shouted as soon as he arrived, "How do I play in the trial field? Quickly tell me, I want to earn 10,000 source stones." "Ha, ha, Arnold, with your brain, you still want to earn 10,000 source stones? Let me do it." The reason why these people were filled with confidence was because Miracle City's advertisement clearly stated that in the 10 stages of the trial field, the monsters and demon beasts that appeared were not strong. As long as they used the right method, even a first true spirit layer expert could easily pass them. How could these chiefs who were proud of themselves not be moved? The weakest among them was in the 3rd true spirit layer. They could earn 10,000 source stones by passing all 10 stages. This kind of temptation was just too big. Mang Yingying stood at the entrance of the trial field and politely said to everyone, "Respected warriors, because the trial field is still being tested, the space isn't that big. It can only hold 10 people at most, so warriors that want to challenge must first pay the fee. I'll go first." Arnold took out 2 primeval stones and gave them to Mang Yingying, who was collecting the money. His 2 large nostrils breathed out roughly as he looked at the other chiefs with a face full of anger. "Just wait and see, I will definitely succeed." When Arnold entered the trial field, he immediately appeared in an illusion. This was a small hall. After a few minutes, there were sharp howls in his ears as a large group of ghosts appeared in the hall. These ghosts did not have a strong aura, only being in the 6th to 7th awakened soul layer. Arnold laughed. This kind of trash wanted to deal with father. This money was a bit too easy to earn. Arnold raised his massive axe and condensed energy on the axe's edge. In an instant, the specter's corporeal body was destroyed. Then a second, a third, a fourth. Although there were many specters, these monsters were not very powerful. Arnold used 10 minutes to completely destroy them. When Arnold thought he could easily pass the stage, he was suddenly surprised to find that the ghosts he cut apart gathered together again. There wasn't a single one missing. What is going on? Arnold stared with wide eyes, not understanding why this kind of situation had occurred. However, the Minotaurs would not use their brains to solve things that they could use their muscles to solve. He wildly charged around and finally killed all of the specters. Countless fragments gathered again. The ghosts all recovered. Damn, could he have been tricked? This was simply a dead end, how could he pass it? When Arnold killed all the ghosts for the third time, he felt like he had used up most of his strength, but what made him feel despair was that the ghosts gathered together again. This time, Arnold did not have the strength to kill them all. When Arnold calmed down and observed, he finally found something fishy. The statues in this palace all had some kind of formation supporting them. It was this power that allowed the specters to revive. If Arnold had found a way to destroy the statues from the start, he could have easily killed all the specters. Damn it! Why am I so stupid? I didn't even notice such an obvious mechanism. Arnold did not have any strength left. Countless ghosts charged over and instantly tore him to pieces. Arnold also returned to the trial field. The other chiefs looked at each other in blank dismay. He came out after going in for 2 minutes. The trial field is different from the arena. The time in the trial field is 1/20th of the outside world, so Chief Arnold has already spent 40 minutes inside. Nan Gongyun walked over with a smile, but Chief Arnold, you haven't even passed a single stage, so you can only obtain a consolation prize. 5 large cans of level 2 meat. After saying this, a gnome brought 5 large cans of meat in front of him. Ha, ha. Ha! Arnold, you haven't even passed a single stage. These people immediately began to unscrupulously laugh at him. Arnold's bull face immediately turned red. He angrily argued, fuck, I was just careless. I want to play again. Arnold once again entered the trial space. In the end, Arnold came out in less than 30 seconds. Arnold's bull face twitched a few times. Damn, the statues can't be blindly destroyed. They have a certain pattern and have to be destroyed in order. Come again, come again. This Minotaur chief was clearly losing impatiently. He entered the trial space again and again, but most of the time, he didn't even last 2 minutes before leaving. This repeated over and over again. He had played a dozen rounds and used up more than 30 low-grade source stones. I've definitely found the pattern. Arnold excitedly gasped for breath. Although he had lost over 30 source stones, instantly spending all of his savings, he didn't feel any heartache at all. Rather it was like he was looking for a great joy. I've spent all of my source stones, who can lend me a few to use? This time I will definitely pass, there will be no problems. Meng Yingying and Nan Gongyun were collecting money on the side. The trial field was not as big as the arena, so it could only hold 10 people at a time. However, it was good that time passed in the trial field, so it only took a few minutes to finish a round. These true spirit cultivators' spiritual energy were not weak, so they wouldn't be tired even if they played for several hours. Meng Yingying secretly nudged Nan Gongyun beside her. How much did we earn? Shoo, be quiet. Nan Gongyun sneakily winked at her. Chief Arnold is 32, Chief Andre is 28, and Great Warrior Luca is 24. In total, it should be around 300. Meng Yingying almost laughed out in happiness. This was just too easy to earn. It had only been half an hour and there were still many people lining up outside, with more and more people appearing. Meng Yingying even found the figures of gnomes and druids. These people seemed like they were all curious and came to challenge. If the trial field was in operation for a day, just how many source stones would they earn? These idiots, didn't they use their brains to think? How could Chu Tian's questions be that easy to solve? Moreover, this fellow Chu Tian was very sly. Just like Arnold, although he failed every time, he would always find a way to solve it, so he kept trying. Want to earn 10,000 source stones? Dream on. The first trial was like this. It would be strange if he didn't lose his underwear. Chapter 440. This time, the virtual trial field was Meng Yingying and Nan Gongyun's idea. They had found inspiration in the Central State Tower of Trials. However, the difference between the Tower of Trials and the Tower of Trials was that although the Tower of Trials was not as dangerous, there was still the possibility of death. This was an unavoidable matter because no matter how perfect the safety measures were, they could not completely avoid being injured in battle. Miracle City's virtual trial field was not the same. It was a pure spiritual illusion, so it was completely harmless. Not to mention the fact that it was cheap to build and the miracle commerce could mass-produce it, turning it into a challenge for everyone. It would turn the trial field into an entertainment field for experts. This was its charm. This temporary trial field was just like the advertisement said. As long as the challenger found the correct method, it was more than enough for the first true spirit layer to pass all the stages. The problem were the stages that Chu Tian made easy for people to pass. There were a total of 10 stages. The first stage had several dozen random scenes. The challenger would trigger one of them every day. Now that Chief Arnold was here, the 10 challengers were experiencing a different environment. If they challenged it the next day, there would be another random scene. After Arnold knew the rules of the game, he was even more anxious to pass the first stage. Therefore, he borrowed several source stones from his clansmen to challenge it several times. Almost all of the wrong ideas were tried, and finally, Arnold found the only correct idea. Arnold entered the trial field. He immediately followed the lessons learned from his previous failures and used the correct order to shatter the stone statues one by one. Then, he killed the large group of ghosts. This time, it was as expected. The spirits did not revive again. He finally passed the first stage. Success! I succeeded! Arnold roared out in joy as he looked at the door of light in front of the main hall. He knew that this was the path to the second stage. Arnold calmed his mind and entered the second stage. This was a strange environment. There was nothing around him, like he was in a chaotic void. It was like he was standing on a black mirror. Although there was light reflected, he couldn't see anything. What kind of challenge was this time? Arnold looked left and right in confusion. White ripples appeared on the mirror-like ground in front of him, as if a stone had been thrown into the water. Faint ripples immediately appeared and spread outwards. Arnold didn't know what was going on, but he could already smell an unusual aura. He instinctively retreated a bit. At the center of the ripples, a black crystal-like sculpture suddenly appeared. At first, this sculpture was just a mass of constantly changing liquid, but it quickly solidified. Then, all kinds of edges and corners appeared, finally forming an image. When Arnold saw what it looked like, he couldn't help but be shocked. Wasn't that him? This was a mirror image that looked exactly like Arnold. However, Arnold was very clear that this was definitely not an ordinary mirror image, because he could only feel coldness from the other party's eyes. It was an absolutely calm and emotionless gaze. Arnold immediately understood. The second stage of the trial was to defeat himself. Interesting. Arnold had fought with countless forest experts, but he had never fought with himself before. He never thought that he would be able to experience the feeling of fighting with himself here. He immediately released a low roar as he released his strength, instantly turning into a shockwave that charged at the other side. The Minotaur's most commonly used charge. The Minotaurs used their powerful bodies and spirit energy to charge at the opponent, breaking down their defenses. Although it was a direct attack without any technique, there was no need to doubt its destructive power. The mirror image seemed to have expected that it would encounter this kind of attack, and immediately dodged sideways, sending out an axe light that directly swept away Arnold. Arnold was shocked to find a terrifying problem. This mirror image was not just like him, it had a deep understanding of him. Whether it was strength, cultivation technique, or martial skills, they were all the same. But the two of them had a deep understanding of him. Compared to Arnold, the mirror image was much calmer. Therefore, it could find Arnold's flaws and launch the most effective attack. Too powerful. Arnold already understood the meaning of the trial. The goal of the second trial was to defeat his strongest self. This meant that he couldn't make any breakthroughs in battle. If he faced his strongest self, he wouldn't have any chance of winning. Only by breaking through his limits could he defeat the mirror image in front of him. This was an excellent opportunity to stimulate his limits and learn more about himself. Good. Very good. Arnold excitedly roared out as his fighting spirit became more and more intense. Father doesn't believe it. Could it be that I can't even defeat myself? In the end, Arnold clashed with the mirror image 4 or 5 times, and the mirror image instantly found an opening. Its large axe directly split Arnold in half, causing Arnold to disappear from the second stage. Arnold had no choice but to believe it. The mirror image knew all of Arnold's weaknesses and the mirror image was very calm. If Arnold could not overcome his weaknesses, they would become fatal flaws. No matter what. In the end, Arnold managed to survive. The others immediately asked Arnold about the second trial. When they found out that the person they were fighting in the second trial was them, everyone had looks of shock on their faces. Congratulations, Chief Arnold. Meng Yingying was worried that if no one passed for too long, it would affect these people's confidence. Now that Chief Arnold had smoothly passed, she could let out a sigh of relief. You have passed the first round and have obtained a chance to draw a lottery. Please immediately participate in the lottery. Nan Gongyun sent over a large lottery wheel. The others came over to take a look out of curiosity. This was because they could vaguely feel that although the trial field was interesting, the difficulty was higher than they imagined. How could passing all 10 trials be easy? The reward of 10,000 spirit stones was probably not easy to obtain, but when they saw the lottery wheel, their spirits were roused. This wheel was divided into several areas and there were source stones rewards. There were 10, 50, and 100 source stones rewards, as well as many other things. Of course these things were things that most of the locals had never seen before. Arnold poured his spirit energy into the wheel. The needle on the large wheel began to spin. Arnold's eyes widened as he kept repeating, 100 primeval stones, 100 primeval stones, 100 primeval stones. If he could get 100 primeval stones, then not only would he not lose this challenge, he would even earn half of it. The locals of the Forest of Chaos, although they were very strong, because of their primitive society, they did not have a mature business or economic model. Therefore, most of the locals were very poor. Even in a small country like Southern Xia, the 3 great clans could easily take out 100 source stones worth of gold coins at their peak. But as a tribe in the depths of the Forest of Chaos, Arnold's Minotaur tribe had several dozen true spirit experts. Even as a chief, he was only worth this much. Therefore, 100 source stones was not a small sum for Chief Arnold. The needle on the wheel reached the 100 source stones area and when it was about to stop, it suddenly moved a bit and landed on the next area. Everyone gave a sigh. Arnold roared out in anger. You've drawn Miracle Commerce's source energy cannon. Meng Yingying shouted in a very surprised voice, congratulations to Chief Arnold. Arnold was a bit stunned, what? Cannon? What cannon? Miracle Commerce's prizes were mostly high-tech products made by the company. The might of the source energy cannons was very terrifying. If each source energy cannon was sold to a rich kingdom, it wouldn't be a problem for a source energy cannon to be sold for several dozen source stones. Not to mention that Miracle Commerce was limited by materials and refining technology. The current production of the source energy cannons was not high and they had never sold this kind of weapon to the outside. The so-called rare things were expensive, so the price of the source energy cannon in the Forest of Chaos would be several times higher. Chief Arnold's luck really isn't bad. Meng Yingying seized this chance to advertise Miracle Commerce's weapon. The source energy cannon is a source energy weapon invented by Miracle Commerce. It has a very long range and is very strong. A single shot can destroy half a mountain and even an earth spirit cultivator would be shattered by a single shot. It's really this strong. Of course. On the entire continent, only our Miracle Commerce has the source energy weapon technology. Meng Yingying said to Arnold, the source energy cannon is not for sale right now. Chief Arnold can auction it here. I think there will be many people interested in this weapon. Nan Gongyun had already brought out the source energy cannon. This cannon was much more refined than when it was first made and it was a bit smaller, but its might was even stronger. Everyone could feel the energy fluctuations coming from it and the incomparably complex source energy array patterns dazzled everyone's eyes. Artillery shells. Of course they had to buy them separately. Miracle Commerce was using this chance to promote their firearms. This firearms trade would be one of Miracle Commerce's most important sources of income. Good thing. Arnold, I'll give 50 pieces. Sell it to us, I'll give 70 pieces. Arnold didn't want to sell it at first because he could see that this thing had shocking might. If it was placed in the Minotaur Valley, it would increase the defenses of the Minotaur Valley by a large amount. But as the bids became higher and higher, Arnold was moved in the end. He sold it to a forest merchant for 120 low-grade primeval stones. Arnold never would have thought that not only would he not suffer a loss, he would even earn back the cost, even earning double the amount of source stones. This was not just a matter of reward, it was also a matter of dignity and face. Arnold was the only one of the challengers to pass the test. This trial field is too fun. Interesting, it's a bit interesting. Arnold put the source stones in his pocket and said with a laugh, but I'm tired from playing today, I'll go back and sleep before continuing. Because time flowed very slowly in the trial field, this kind of spiritual illusion could easily cause fatigue. Arnold had only played for an hour on the surface, but his mind had been fighting for close to 20 hours. The continuous mental fatigue stacked on top of each other, and even a minotaur like Arnold felt a bit tired. Arnold had picked up a large bargain. The others couldn't sit still again. When they found out about the second trial, everyone felt like their hearts were being scratched by a cat. The trial field's business was very good from start to finish. After an entire day, there were more and more people lining up. The trial field was never empty from start to finish. Nangong Yun and Meng Yingying's hands were almost sore from collecting money. Chapter 441. Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun happily handed over their spoils to Chu Tian. It was a large bag of source stones and the three of them carefully counted it. There was a total of 3,500 low-grade source stones. When this number appeared in front of them, the three of them were still very shocked. Although they had used the conscription to attract many forest experts, it was still too exaggerated to have this kind of result. Chu Tian thought of the rough valuation that Meng Qinggu had done today. Miracle Commerce's total assets converted into source stones was less than 200,000 low-grade source stones. As for the money in the warehouse, it was around 30,000–40,000 low-grade source stones. Miracle Commerce had been established for over a year. This was all their harvest. Although Meng Qinggu and Chu Tian were a bit dissatisfied, this was not a small number for any power or family. Chu Tian and Meng Qinggu had started from scratch, and they had started from scratch in a small country. Being able to do this in a year was a matter to be proud of. Looking at it now, it really was too little. They had built a small trial field together and they had earned a large income of 10% of Miracle Commerce's cash in a single day. This also showed the huge commercial potential of the virtual spiritual technology. This was definitely a good thing to make quick money with. Meng Yingying said in a very emotional voice, "You don't know since you weren't there, but those locals were too crazy. Don't look at how poor they are normally, it was like they picked up money from the ground. Those fellows that didn't get a chance to line up almost started fighting with each other. I'm very puzzled, is it really that fun? The Forest of Chaos is rich in resources and the locals do not lack cultivation resources. The environment here is very closed and there aren't any foreign goods, so there aren't many places to spend money. Source stones are not omnipotent in the Forest of Chaos, so their desire for source stones is not like the outside world." Chu Tian thought about it and said, "Of course, the main reason is because their lives are too boring and empty. It was hard to find a place to have fun, and although we know that it is hard to earn money from the trial field, we still couldn't resist the itch to try it out." "Who cares?" Nangong Yun excitedly said, "Excluding the cost of operating the spiritual space and the prizes for them, we can earn at least 3,000. 10 days is 30,000. We'll first slaughter these fellows and solve Miracle City's financial crisis. We have to cast a long line to catch a big fish. It's not enough to just focus on these people. We have to make a name for ourselves and attract more people." Chu Tian shook his head. "This trial field is too simple. It won't take more than 10 days to half a month for people to get bored with it. At that time, the profits will naturally drop. Since we want to ruthlessly slaughter these guys, we need to create better and better attractions. Meng Yingying asked, "What do you want to do?" "Simple," Chu Tian chuckled. "Let's make a bigger, more fun, and more interesting trial field." In the next few days, on one side was the fiery recruitment and on the other side was the virtual trial field's popularity. There were some shaman priests and green religion priests that came to line up. Everyone gathered together to discuss strategies and how to deal with their own mirror images, but most of them were complaining that the trial field was too small, making them line up for a long time without being able to play a single round. Just as the people were waiting in line and feeling very annoyed, someone suddenly said, "Hey, do you know? I've heard the latest news. The city lord has brought people to create a new trial field and the trial content here will be moved over. At that time, even if 1,000 people start at the same time, it will be more than enough." "Really?" Arnold and the others revealed looks of joy. If there really was a trial field that could hold 1,000 people, would they still need to line up like this? "I've also heard of it. The new trial field is different from this one. Not only will it have individual challenges, it will also have group challenges. We will be able to enter the trial with our clansmen and the prizes will be even better." Everyone's bodies trembled. "What? There's actually this kind of thing. This kind of individual challenge trial was already very interesting, could it be that there would be group challenges?" Everyone began to discuss with each other. As if to confirm everyone's guesses, there was a giant airship with a giant screen floating in the sky. When had the forest natives ever seen this kind of big fellow flying in the sky? All of them were dumbfounded. It was fine if there was an airship floating in the sky, but this airship was not the main point. The main point was the content being advertised. "Do you want to challenge the Hell Demon Dragon? Do you want to challenge the Mountain Giant? The Miracle Commerce Trial Field will fulfill your dream of a challenge, allowing you to experience the pleasure and joy of fighting a peak existence." The voice was transmitted through the loudspeaker, and at the same time, various images began to appear on the big screen. It was a world of volcanoes filled with lava, and a huge figure slowly floated up from the huge lava lake. It was a huge dragon, and its black body split open, with flames and heat spewing out. Its entire body was burning in the flames of death, and it let out a monstrous roar of rage. The image suddenly zoomed out at this time. There were large amounts of strange demons appearing in the volcanoes, just like it was the territory of a demon. Suddenly, there was a blood-boiling background music from the speakers. There was a large group of brave warriors descending from the sky. There were ogres, barbarians, and minotaurs, all of them from the forest races. They were all covered in light as they landed in the middle of the monsters. All kinds of beautiful cultivation techniques and martial skills were released, destroying large amounts of monsters as they swept through the area at a shocking speed. Finally, the demon dragon in the lava lake was startled. Hong! The volcanoes all erupted. Countless pillars of flames soared into the sky. In this apocalyptic scene, the demon dragon spread its wings and charged into the sky. The warriors faced the terrifying demon dragon without any fear. They bravely raised their weapons and took on a challenging stance. The battle music became louder and louder, as if it had reached its climax. The moment the warriors fought the demon dragon, the entire scene suddenly stopped. These people were stunned. This advertisement was just too exciting. Which warrior didn't want to challenge this kind of powerful life form? Who didn't want to experience the feeling of challenging their limits? But they only had one life in the real world. No one would do something stupid like sending themselves to death. Moreover, even if they wanted to slay a dragon, the dragon might not care about them. The locals all felt a wave of anger in their chests. They wanted to excitedly shout out and immediately rush to the trial field to experience it. Even if they had to spend more source stones, they had to try it. How many times would they have this kind of chance in their lives? Not to mention that the airship would only cost 5 low-grade source stones each time. Everyone instantly went crazy. They could fight an evil dragon for 5 source stones. Was there anything more pleasurable in this world than this? The only regret now was that the new trial field had not been repaired yet. So before the new trial field was opened, these people could only pass time in this small trial field. Once this virtual spiritual technology was developed, it immediately obtained great success. At the very least, it won the favor of these forest warriors, and large amounts of source stones were destined to flow into their pockets. Chu Tian planned to build a spiritual library in the future to entice the forest scholars. Time flowed very slowly in the spiritual space, so studying in the spiritual library for a month was equivalent to studying in the real world for a year. At that time, not only would the gnome scholars go crazy, but the other forest scholars would also rush to join. Miracle City's people would become more and more lively. This was the beginning. First collect and then release. Miracle City would first gather people, and when it matured, they would be able to develop it. When the spiritual technology matured and the spiritual energy network was built, each tribe and city would be able to build a spiritual library, a trial field, and an arena. The entire forest of chaos would be connected, and Miracle City would rule over people's entertainment, lives, and studies. The new trial field will need a few more days to be built. Chu Tian looked at the renovated castle in front of him. This place doesn't need our help anymore, so we'll use this time to do something else. Nangong, help me bring a group of experts over. They have to be at least in the third true spirit layer. What do you need all these experts for? Why are you asking so much? Of course it's useful. But boss, you said that they are experts. Do you think they will come at your beck and call? Stupid. Just tell the people helping this city lord, after the new trial field is built, wouldn't it be fine to let them play 10 times for free? Nangong Yun immediately ran over to gather people, and before she even disappeared, she had brought 30-40 forest experts with her. Even if these people weren't chiefs, they were famous warriors in the nearby forest. Normally they were all arrogant, but now they were called over with just a few words from Chu Tian. I want to ask everyone for help, I don't know if. City Lord, don't say any more. An orc jumped out, the City Lord's matter is our matter. That's right. The City Lord has helped us this much, so what does it matter if we help the City Lord with a bit? Chu Tian didn't waste time and found Clark and the gnomes to lead the way, leading these people to ride the elevator underground. That's right, the reason Chu Tian found all these experts wasn't for anything else but the Eye of the Star. The Eye of the Star was the core of the transport tower. The Eye of the Star fragment was also the main material for the transport scroll. The Eye of the Star had a chance to cultivate the Chu Tian immortal body to perfection. Whether it was for the development of the city or to increase his own strength, Chu Tian needed to kill the star elementals and obtain large amounts of Eye of the Star. But the star elementals were too dangerous. After last time's lesson, Chu Tian didn't dare be rash and used several days to prepare. The star elementals were very strong, but they didn't have any intelligence. No matter how strong this fellow was, it wouldn't be a problem for Chu Tian. Chu Tian first made a talisman that could block and weaken elemental perception. Everyone had one on them, and when they needed to use it, the talisman's effect would interfere with the perception of the star elementals. Other than that, Chu Tian also prepared a special bait for the star elementals and an array to restrain the power of the stars. This was a three-way preparation. Now he recruited several dozen experts. What did these star elementals count for? After Chu Tian cleared out the star elementals, not only would he be able to buy several dozen Eye of the Star, he could also start mining this star mine. In the future, he would be able to produce meteor grass and star stones, which would be enough for Chu Tian to train even more powerful soldiers. Chapter 442. Pa. Chu Tian threw the small bottle into the center of the source energy array, and a mist-like aura slowly floated out. It condensed and did not scatter as it floated in the air. At this time, a wandering star elemental covered in starlight was immediately attracted over. The star elemental walked into the source energy array and prepared to absorb the aura. The entire source energy array suddenly opened and a kind of energy field covered the star elemental's body, causing its incorporeal body to tremble a few times, as if it was being strongly disturbed. Light flashed in the air and large amounts of elemental runes continued to form. It was like a piece of iron meeting a magnet as it was attracted to the star elemental's body, falling onto its body. The star elemental didn't have a physical body, so it immediately began to solidify into a liquid state. Its power was quickly suppressed, and it was like a half-frozen jelly. Its originally light and graceful body now became difficult to move. Although it did not have any intelligence, its instincts told it that this was bad. The star elemental continued to struggle to escape. Chu Tian saw that the time was right and immediately made a gesture. Several dozen experts made a move and after an intense explosion, several large holes appeared on the ground. The star elemental had already been killed and when its body shattered, it exploded like fireworks. Countless high-purity star crystals scattered everywhere and there was even a bright eye of the star among them. Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun began to collect the high-purity star crystals on the ground. Their storage bags were already bulging. They had killed a total of 28 star elementals on the way and Chu Tian had obtained 28 eyes of the star. There were countless high-purity star crystals. The entire process was smoother than expected. The star elementals here had already been mostly killed by Chu Tian. The biggest regret now was that there were too few star elementals. Each eye of the star was a precious resource. It represented a transport tower, large amounts of transport scrolls, and it also represented the perfection realm starlight immortal body. With these 28 pieces, after deducting the team's internal consumption, they could only build a few dozen transport towers. Of course. Chu Tian should be satisfied. Eye of the star was equivalent to a level 4 material. Not only was this a level 4 material, it was also a very precious level 4 material. Being able to find this many in a single cave, it was simply dog shit luck. There's only one left. Chu Tian's gaze landed on the core region of the star mineral. Let's work harder. We can call it a day after this. This was the last and strongest star elemental. Although Chu Tian didn't startle it, the aura it emitted was enough to make Chu Tian feel fear. Therefore, when he was hunting the other star elementals, Chu Tian avoided this area as much as possible to not attract its attention. Chu Tian found a suitable spot to plant the array flag. This was a source energy array specially used to restrain the star elementals and everyone could see its effects. Being able to kill over 20 star elementals without suffering any injuries was all thanks to this array. Once those dangerous astral elementals entered the formation, they were immediately suppressed. They couldn't resist at all and could only wait to be slaughtered. Everyone walked around, activating the talismans that blocked the detection of elemental life forms. Now, it was very difficult for the star elementals to sense their existence. Get ready. Begin. Chu Tian threw a small bottle into the center of the array. The small bottle shattered and released a smoky substance that was sensed by the sleeping star elementals. A thick energy aura came from the cracks in the ground and large amounts of starlight quickly gathered together. Finally it surrounded the core of the eye of the star and condensed into a several-foot-tall elemental giant. This fellow was very big. Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun weren't strong enough, so they didn't participate in the battle and just watched from afar. This star elemental was more than double the size of the previous ones and the energy it condensed was several times that of the other star elementals. Its entire body was covered in a majestic aura. This was simply the Star Elemental King. The Star Elemental King was awakened and it immediately began to move towards the source energy array. Although the Star Elemental King was very strong, this kind of elemental life form did not have any intelligence. It could only instinctively move closer to something that was clearly a trap, but it couldn't distinguish it at all. It didn't even think as it walked to the center of the source energy array. Activate the array. The 8 gnomes with deep cultivations heard Chu Tian's order and activated the array. The star elemental's body was covered in an intense energy field and it suddenly trembled several times. Countless runes were attracted to the star elemental's body and it made its glowing body dim. Even its movements became incomparably slow and difficult. It was sealed. Everyone had killed over 20 star elementals, so they had a basic understanding of the situation. This giant elemental life form had been suppressed and now was the best time to make a move. Everyone didn't even think as they jumped out to attack. At this moment, the star elemental king felt a sense of crisis, and a wave of fluctuation suddenly came from its body. It was actually mixed with a bit of angry spiritual power. Its solidified body suddenly lit up with a strong light, and most of the runes on its body surface evaporated. Chu Tian's expression slightly changed. Be careful. The star elemental king was stronger than they imagined and it was different from the other star elementals. This fellow already had a bit of consciousness and although it didn't reach the level of intelligence, it was much higher than the other star elementals that relied on their instincts. After the star elemental king broke free of the seal, the suppressed power was released once again. Its body released a buzzing sound as countless starlight connected to each other. It was like a protective barrier that tightly covered its body. The forest experts fiercely attacked the barrier. In the end, the protective shield did not shatter. As the countless starlights collided violently, a strong electromagnetic shock burst forth. The people who had launched the attack were all hit by the rebound force, and all of them were sent flying more than 10 meters away like kites with their strings cut. All of them suffered serious injuries. Such strong fellows. Chu Tian had found forest experts. When several forest experts attacked together, there weren't many people in Miracle City that could block it unscathed. Not to mention that they couldn't break free of the seal and they were injured while blocking the attack. The forest locals were shocked. Although they knew that the star elementals weren't weak, only now did they realize that these fellows that were easily killed were actually this strong. If it wasn't for Chu Tian using targeted methods to restrain them, perhaps they would be the ones being killed right now. When the star elemental king sent everyone flying, the runes that covered its body were destroyed one by one. Everyone could clearly feel that with each rune that disappeared, the star elemental king's power suddenly increased. If its power was completely released, even if Chu Tian had the advantage in numbers, it would be hard to avoid more than half of them dying. These forest locals hesitated, they didn't know if they should go all out. It wasn't worth it for this kind of opponent. Don't panic. While Chu Tian was shouting, several talismans were activated in his hands. These were specially prepared for special situations, mainly used to strengthen the binding and seal. When these talismans were activated, they turned into energy that entered the source energy array under his feet. Light came from the edge of the source energy array and wrapped around the star elemental king in the center like countless threads. The power of the seal doubled. The star elemental king couldn't fight back for now. This kind of suppression was too short, it could only last 2-3 seconds at most. The star barrier released by the star elemental king hadn't been broken. This layer of defense was enough to protect it before it recovered its mobility and strength. Everyone had seen the might of this defense. Although the attacks of several forest experts had weakened the defense a bit, it was still very strong and it couldn't be easily broken. Chu Tian activated the starlight immortal body, he had to make a move in this situation. The demon god sword source spirit was released. Chu Tian communicated with the netherworld artifact spirit and flames quickly covered his body. His sword art was released to the peak and he took a step forward, turning into 8 clones that released an overbearing sword glow that slammed into the star elemental's defensive barrier. A deafening explosion sounded out. Chu Tian's strength couldn't compare to the forest experts working together, but Chu Tian's demon god sword source spirit had a strong destructive attribute and the netherworld flame that had evolved many times was the nemesis of defensive cultivation techniques. The two attacks caused the star elemental king's defense to explode. There was a rebound that was like an avalanche that came crashing down. The flames covering Chu Tian's body were shattered, and a large number of cracks appeared on the starlight protecting his body. He was instantly bounced dozens of feet away and fell to the ground like a cannonball, creating a large pit with a loud bang. A good chance. The demon god sword source spirit was close to a god-level source spirit. Its destructive power destroyed the star elemental's protective barrier and created a precious opportunity for the others. The others all attacked together and the star elemental king was violently attacked, finally shattering into pieces. Chu Tian, are you alright? Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun helped Chu Tian up. I'm fine. Chu Tian waved his hand. Although his cultivation base wasn't high, he still had the large success immortal body, so this rebound wouldn't be fatal. Collect the spoils of war. The star elemental king was truly worthy of being the strongest star elemental. There were 4-5 times more high-purity star crystals than before and the quality of the eye of the star was also a level higher. This kind of eye of the star could kill several of them. This area is basically safe because the ferocious astral elementals have always occupied this area. Other crypt monsters have not been active nearby. We can build this area into the Devil's Mouth's outpost to prepare for future exploration of the deeper underworld. Chu Tian said to Clark, other than that, the resources here are very important to Miracle City's future development, so quickly gather people to arrange the defenses. When Chu Tian finished his task and was prepared to leave, Nangong Yun suddenly said, there seems to be something here. After the Star Elemental King was destroyed, other than the large amount of star crystal fragments and the Eye of the Star, there were still some other things left. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.